Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, August 3rd, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps and steps and steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Sonia Shah, saying it's time to tell a new story of coronavirus. Meanwhile, 155,000 are dead, and Deborah Birx concedes the U.S. coronavirus is extraordinarily widespread. Meanwhile, 1/3 of New York City's small businesses are gone for good, and 30 million people just lost $2,400 a month. And Republican lawmakers apparently have no incentive to help them. Meanwhile, Trump sidelines the CDC and tasks the Pentagon with non-existent vaccine distribution. And TikTok. Microsoft has 45 days to buy it. Trump assaults the 2020 census and the U.S. Post Office. Feds leave Portland. Protests turn peaceful. GOP convention bans journalists. Joe Biden polling well in North Carolina and Georgia. And the Democrats warn McConnell. Seat a new Supreme Court justice, and we will pack the court. All this and more on today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. It is Monday. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a good weekend. More of the same in many respects. The coronavirus continues. We're hearing more about outbreaks that are flaring up in Europe. And of course, in this country, numbers are more or less stabilizing, but becoming more widespread in some ways. I'm also very skeptical about the stabilization of these numbers. I'm skeptical, but I haven't heard anybody who's an expert on this actually look into this stuff at all. And maybe we will ask Sonia Shah about this. I don't know that she would have information on it, but it does seem weird to me that things leveled off literally the day after the CDC stops getting the numbers and the White House gets them first.
They just started vetting them.
I mean, like it sounds very conspiratorial to say that, but it also sort of sounds sort of obvious in some ways. But who knows? But nevertheless, we do have 155,000 dead. We are hitting death toll numbers like we haven't seen since May. And there are reports of problems in schools in Georgia. One school system got hit hard. I think it was
Gwinnett County.
In Gwinnett County, yep. And I imagine, certainly been my experience, the only thing that I'm talking about with people right now is like Should we send the kids to school? Should they do the hybrid or well, obviously they're going to attend school, but the question is, should they do the hybrid model in New York or should they do the remote only? And if they do the hybrid model for the first couple of weeks and then they go remote only, are they going to be lonely? But also, is it going to put them behind the 8 ball because they've shifted over into another sort of, I guess, parallel track? And of course, a lot of parenting, they're not in any way qualified to make any of these decisions. I don't know that anybody is, frankly, but there it is. So that's where we're at. And meanwhile, waiting on Joe Biden to pick a running mate. Polling looks pretty good. And in Washington, the Republican Senate has basically skipped town. And Mnuchin is essentially negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats on behalf of Donald Trump, although, according to Steve Mnuchin, Donald Trump is intimately involved in the negotiations regarding in what manner can we screw the workers and, more broadly speaking, the American public during the course of this pandemic. There's a lot of new data that has come out now that we are just past this is the first day where, I think people got their checks prior to Friday, but their last checks prior to Friday. But we have 63%, something to that effect, 65%, somewhere around that number of people were actually making more on unemployment than they were during, in terms of their actual wages. And it was keeping the economy afloat. It was keeping them in their homes or their apartments, their houses. That has gone away for tens of millions of people. And all the money, the extra $2,400 has gone away for 30 million people. So do the math, folks. That is, those people are done spending any money. They are now going to get evicted. And all the data shows that there is no correlation between getting that extra money, or let me put it this way, no significant correlation between getting that extra money and not returning to work. There's been multiple studies on this now. And there's some tiny marginal correlation, but so what? All right, so let's play this clip from Steve Mnuchin, who says that Trump is incredibly involved.
Do you think the president needs to be more involved this weekend? He's been
the president's incredibly involved. So let me
but
just
he's
say,
been golfing this weekend. So do you think he needs to hold a meeting here at the White House? Does he need to be involved in these talks?
I think Mark and I spoke to the president something like 8 or 10 times yesterday. The president, wherever he is available around the clock for us. I spoke to him very late last night. I'll be speaking to him again this morning. The president is fully available.
I'm intimately involved for... He's literally on the golf course and they're calling him.
Just communications technology means you're on the clock all the time now. This is like when you hear billionaires talk about how they work 80 hours a week and they're counting when they're in the back being chauffeured around answering emails as work.
Right. I was on my yacht and I'm still if somebody's got a call whether we should buy those shares, I got to answer the phone and say yes. Constantly working. That is hilarious. I don't know if I should be terrified by that or or what? Meanwhile, as you know, folks, hiring can be difficult. But if you're a company that's currently looking to hire, you got new difficulties. How do you safely open your doors? How do you find the right person? Product Fulfillment Solutions was one such company. They needed to hire an organized, detailed-oriented executive assistant, so they turned to ZipRecruiter. I've talked about ZipRecruiter for years. I've used ZipRecruiter. Brendan's here because of ZipRecruiter. They got to do an ad about me. Tired of talking about other companies. We did this. But Product Fulfillment Solutions, they did it during this pandemic. They turned to ZipRecruiter, and they have ZipRecruiter has a powerful matching technology. It finds people with the right skills and experience for your job. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. We were one of those 4. Well, I mean, obviously there's more than 4, but we were one of those 80% of employers who did that. But I held out. That's how we got Brendan. But that's also how Product Fulfillment Solutions found Christina Rumboletti for their executive assistant role. Christina lost her job during COVID-19, so she created a profile on ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter identified her as a great match for the Product Fulfillment Solutions role and sent them her profile. Then the CEO reached out to Christina, invited her to apply to the job. She applied, quickly became a top candidate. 2 days later, she was hired. Zip, zang, bing, boom. ZipRecruiter helped Christina find the right job, and they help Product Fulfillment Solutions find the right person for their role fast. See how ZipRecruiter can help you hire. Try it now for free at ZipRecruiter.com/majority. That's ZipRecruiter.com/majority. I cannot guarantee you will find someone as skilled as Brendan, so perfectly suited for this show as Brendan. But it worked for us, so we got Brendan.
Just swimming in a algorithm river over here.
That's right. We cast in the right direction. Folks, I think you know that I'm a little bit sartorially challenged. I'm much less so these days. I also don't like to go to places to shop. And these days, who does? But how can you be sure that you're getting the right size? How can you be sure that you're getting what you like? Stitch Fix. It's a personal styling company. It makes getting the clothes you love effortless. It's a completely different way to shop. It's all about you every single time. To get started, go to stitchfix.com/majority. You set up your profile. Then they deliver you great looks personalized just for you in your colors, styles, and budget. You pay a $20 styling fee, but it is credited towards anything you keep in this box of stuff they send you. You can schedule at any time. There's no subscription required. Shipping, returns, exchanges, they're easy and they're free. Stitch Fix does all the hard work for you, making great style effortless for everybody, including men, women, and kids. I got some of my favorite shoes, these leather chukkas. Are they chukkas or chukas? We go through this every time, Brendan. I can't remember what it is, but
I say chukka, but
they're chukkas. They're the most stylish shoe I own. And I got a great straight fit pant, which I've been wearing the heck out of, from Flag and Anthem. I had never heard of them before, but and Mila absconded my my flannel shirt. But you go in, you tell them what kind of brands you like, what kind of looks you like. I don't like logos on my thing and blah, 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 all this, all my weird idiosyncrasies about clothing. And then they send back like ideas for you and send you out a box. And if you don't like any of them, you send it back. If you like all of them, you keep it. You can get started today at stitchfix.com/majority. You get 25% off when you keep everything in your fix. That's stitchfix.com/majority for 25% off when you keep everything in your fix. Stitchfix.com/majority. Great way to update your wardrobe without having to go out and shop. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And do we have her, Brendan?
Yeah, she's going to call in momentarily.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe we should just wait until we definitely have her on. So Deborah Birx basically came out, and she is the lead, I guess, authority in the Trump White House for dealing with coronavirus. And apparently she and Fauci, and I don't know, Fauci's like been sort of relegated to the back seats, have warned 20 states in the Sun Belt, the Midwest, and the Pacific Northwest that the virus spread is accelerating within their borders. Sunday, there were 478 deaths that were tallied, down from 566 reported the same day last week. However, Texas hadn't even reported at that point, and they had nearly 300 deaths a day. So I think it's pretty big, the numbers. All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Sonia Shah. She is a journalist and author of Pandemic, Tracking Contagions from Cholera to Ebola and Beyond, as well as the next migration. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome to the program Sonia Shah. She's an independent investigative journalist and author of Pandemic, Tracking Contagions from Cholera to Ebola and Beyond, as well as The Next Migration, The Beauty and Terror of Life on the Move, and a piece in The Nation magazine. It's time to tell a new story about coronavirus. In that piece, and here we are, Sonia, with 155,000 dead. We haven't, not only have we not seemed to contained the virus, we have not in any way seemed to have made any progress in conceptualizing how we might contain it. There doesn't seem to be an effort. It's barely accepted that it existed, as far as the White House is concerned. Tell us, what is the story that we are telling ourselves about coronavirus, and frankly, I think you would argue, pandemics more broadly speaking.
Well, I think the story we've been telling is that this is something that is fairly simple to repel if we just had the right drug or vaccine, if we just had the right sort of biomedical commodity, and we just need to kind of quickly create one and use that as a weapon against this invasive germ that's sort of encroaching upon us from foreign bodies and foreign lands. And, I think that plays itself out in a lot of different ways, but the most deadly way is that it makes us minimize our own role. And so rather than thinking of this as something, well, we have to change our behaviors. We have to change our collective behaviors in order to minimize the spread of this virus between us, in order to, reduce the risk that a virus like this would emerge in the first place. We don't really think about all that stuff because we just say, oh, a new virus, let's quickly get a new drug, get a new vaccine, and we'll just, hang tight until we have these new sort of biomedical commodities to save us. And I think what we're seeing already is that that's not enough. We already have 150,000 people dead, and the vaccine is nowhere to be seen. And whether we get one in, October or next year, it's it's a huge death toll we're going to face before we have any such tools. And then, of course, there's all the other questions about whether that vaccine will really save us. I think there's real questions to be asked about that as well.
All right. So, we have there's two subsets, it seems to me, of the paradigm that you're talking about. One is sort of how we should behave. One is how we should structure our societies to be more resilient for something like this. And then the other is how do we address this now that it's here, right? Those are the two sort of it seems to me, two I guess, silos of responses to this. One of the things that occurs to me is that, I've spoken to epidemiologists who are 6 months after the first peak, it comes back in a second peak. And I'm becoming very much convinced that that is not a function of the virus as much as a function of human beings, getting overconfident or not taking it seriously. So let's focus first on the question of with a new paradigm, how do we address this from this point forward?
Well, I think the way we address this is to really put at the foreground of our efforts, the absolute highest priority is behavior change, is changing the way the virus is allowed to spread between us because it's exploiting human behaviors. So how do we do that? Do we spend billions of dollars developing a vaccine and throwing money at drug companies? Or do we spend all of that money trying to figure out through social science and anthropology and psychology, how much money do you have to give to a single mom so she can stay home and not go to work if it endangers her life? How much support do you have to give to a school in order to make it safe and reduce transmission opportunities inside that school? All of those things that we're kind of talking about in a really a half-baked way, in a sort of very dismissive fashion where we're not really throwing nearly enough resources or attention to it. Those are the things that should be as important, more important than the race for the vaccine. So there's so many questions we're not even asking. We don't even know, for example, what is the infective dose? So we don't know how much virus do you need to be exposed to in order to get sick, right? We don't really know what that is because that's not a priority question for us. Right? If we knew that, then we would know what kinds of behaviors are most risky. We have a very crude understanding of that right now. So what I'm saying is we need to think of this as something that is about human behavior. It's not about the evil germ that we have to kill with some killing chemical. It's about how we spread it. And so that means we need to all get together and think really carefully and spend our resources figuring out how can we reshape our society so that this thing can't spread as quickly between us?
I read an interview with you that you gave in January. I think it was right towards the end of January, and it is it's a little bit eerie. You seem to know stuff then about the virus that our government didn't seem to even acknowledge as late as April or May. So I guess, the point of what you're saying on some level is that we are making choices and we are not conscious of the choices that we are making. We're sort of backing into them, or people who are making these choices for us are doing it on the basis of something other than how do we deal with coronavirus?
Yes, I think that's exactly right. And I don't think it's just me. I think if the whole reason I was able to write a book about pandemics, about how microbes turn into pandemic-causing pathogens and cause all this death and disruption, is because so much is known. We know how this happens, right? We know where these microbes originate from. We know how they spill over into human populations. We know how they spread between us, and we know what it takes to vanquish them. We've done it many times in the past. And the way we have vanquished new pathogens in the past is not through a magic bullet drug or a wonder shot. It's just not. That is not what the history has shown. The way we have conquered malaria, cholera, tuberculosis, typhoid, any number of pathogens that used to take thousands and thousands of lives in Western countries for decades and centuries was through social reform. It was not because we came up with some fancy new vaccine or antibiotic. In fact, the most success we've ever had taming a pathogen with a vaccine was with smallpox. And that vaccine was based on, centuries old folk remedies that were common in Asia and Africa. So it wasn't a high-tech product. Now, I'm not saying that, the drugs and vaccines that the pharmaceutical industry provides for us are not useful. They're hugely useful, but they're not useful in taming a pathogen when it is, newly emerged and causing an epidemic. Those things work when you have those problems under control already, and they kind of keep it down to a low level if you use them correctly. But to have a huge outbreak like we're having now, and to expect like a single vaccine to suddenly come and save us it's fantasy. It's an ahistorical idea.
It's ahistorical. What do you think the incentive structures are to frame it that way? I mean, is it simply because is it a combination of humans have a pretty poor imagination, or is it a combination of that and humans have a pretty poor imagination when they stand to profit in not imagining?
I mean, I think it's partially that. It's also just an artifact of our history. So we had kind of tamed a lot of the really bad pathogens that used to plague us through clean water and sanitation and rules around like food contamination and better housing. All of those things really tamed a lot of pathogens that used to, cause pandemics and epidemics in the past. And then we came up with antibiotics and vaccines, and, we have this evidence-based medicine that really we, heroized, and we decided, well, those things are what saved us. And it really, we indoctrinated several generations of Americans into believing that infectious diseases were a thing of the past. And these were things that you could easily control. It's just an infection. Get a course of antibiotics. It's $30 or $40, right? That kind of rhetoric tells you all of it right there. We don't say, oh, it's just cancer, get some chemotherapy, because we know cancer is a big problem. You got to do a lot of different things to deal with it, right? Well, infectious diseases can be a big problem too. They're complex. And we're seeing when we have these new diseases where we don't have, something off the shelf that we can use, whether it's Zika or Ebola or any number of the new pathogens we're seeing today, including coronavirus, that we don't have something readily available and we can't make it fast enough. So then what do you do, right? Then what happens? The way we've been trained has sort of divorced us from that reality that we lived with for many centuries before this.
Are there countries that are doing this correctly at this point? I mean, over the weekend, it seemed like there were new problems that were developing in different countries in Europe. Now, I think their definition of what a problem is relative to ours, I think is they seem to be much more sensitive about it. Like they're ringing the alarm bells when, for something that, we would be like, oh, great, we can just send people to school, no problem, open up everything. I mean, they have different set of standards, but because this, at the end of the day, the virus is just not going to walk away at one point because people are doing the right thing. But are there models out there that you think are particularly successful?
I mean, I think all of those countries that are having minor eruptions that are then quickly contained, that's the best you can hope for, right? Like you can't have zero. That's not a realistic goal. So you can't have zero, but can you get in front of it so that when I think of it as like a fire, can you contain it when it's still an ember, when it's still just a spark, or are you waiting for a bonfire and then you're smelling the smoke from 10 miles away and then you're coming and dealing with it? That's what we're doing in the United States. We're smelling the smoke, and we don't know where the fire is. And by the time we recognize that it's happening, it's already huge. And then, then we have to take very crude measures, or we pretend it's not happening, or, any number of the sort of chaotic responses that we're seeing. But in these other countries, they're getting ahead of it. So they are screening, they are doing surveillance, they know where those sparks and embers are. And as soon as they start to ignite a little bit, they go and they, put the fire out. So that is the best case scenario. The fact that we're talking about it in the same way is just indicative of our lack of understanding about how this pandemic is going to unfold, that you're not going to be in a place where there's 0 cases and 0 introductions. As long as the virus exists in the world anywhere, it's going to come into different places because we are highly mobile. Whether we're crossing international borders or not, we are moving around and we are interacting with each other because we're humans and that's what we do. So, we're talking about it all in the same breath as if, oh, well, South Korea had a little outbreak now, so they're not doing so well either. That's just totally the wrong way to think about it. What we should be looking at is the cases per 100,000, like something where you can compare apples to apples. And then I think you'll be more clear that what they're doing is they're getting out in front of it. What we're doing is completely reactive if we're doing anything at all.
Right. It is just that they are far more sensitive to these things than we seem to be, because that is part and parcel of why they're doing a better job of this. Let's break down the sort of the where we can see our, not just our because what you're talking about is perceiving coronavirus and pathogens like this as something that is, no silver bullet is going to deal with this. We need to sort of have almost like a wellness approach as a society heading into this. But before we get to sort of that full-on idea, give me a sense of how these other societies, for the most part, also are better situated to deal with these things than we are, right? I mean, both as like they have mechanisms so that they can pay people. Like even if we decided tomorrow, for whatever reason, the Republicans said like, yeah, we're going to do a, regular payments, not just for unemployment, but we're going to do it for everybody, or something to that effect. We don't really have a very good mechanism for it. We didn't have a particularly good mechanism for it in terms of the paycheck protection program. Other societies have better mechanisms for this and for delivery of healthcare. Give me a sense of how, like, what you think would be different in this country if by fluke, we just had a more robust healthcare system in terms of I want to say if we had Medicare for all, 10 years ago, but if we did, we'd probably be a different society that would have reacted to all of this very differently anyway. So it's sort of hard to say that in terms of like, if we had wings, we would be flying, but give me a sense of how it would work. I mean, just forget the sort of like the personality of the country and our disposition. If we had that physical, if aliens had imposed Medicare for all on us, grudgingly 3 years ago, how would we be different? What things would be different from a practical standpoint?
I think we would, we already do this, right? So this is, I don't think this is like controlling this pandemic. I don't think that's somehow, alien to our system. Like we do this all the time in public health in this country, and we do it successfully. We have little outbreaks of, say, measles or, chickenpox or HIV or syphilis or, there's all these other pathogens that we have little outbreaks, here and there. We do surveillance. Doctors let, the CDC know and their state health departments know. And we do exactly what we're talking about trying to do with coronavirus, which is testing and socially, supported isolation, contact tracing and isolation. Those are things that work. That's just a regular tool of public health. We've been doing it in this country for a long time. We just have completely failed to do it with this one. I don't think there's any structural reason why we couldn't do it. I think it's the reason we're not doing it is absolutely political. It was a political choice that our leadership made. Because whether it was incompetence or just a lack of understanding, or because they thought it was politically useful for them to try to ignore it and make it into a fight. Whatever the reason is, and, we'll be talking and figuring that out for probably years to come. But could we have controlled this with our existing infrastructure? Yes, because we would have done it much earlier. It wouldn't have become such a huge problem where you need 300,000 contact tracers. That's what we need now. That's what we need now because we have so many cases, because there's so much virus just in the community across the whole country. But if we had responded in January and February when this thing was first coming out and when the WHO sounded the alarm, and we had a system in place here, we had a plan, we had a pandemic plan team that was, installed at the very highest echelons of our government. We have a public health system. It's not as robust as in other countries, but it's certainly up to the task if you have a new virus and it's not everywhere all at once, So we could have activated that and it could have worked. But now we're in a totally different situation because now we have so much virus that it's completely overwhelmed the capacity that we had, even if we had the political will to actually use it, which we don't.
So when we tell a different story of coronavirus, are we really, has the ship sailed here? I don't anticipate, we're watching now a Republican Congress who it appears to me have basically said, we got the things we wanted most urgently, which was corporate, basically a corporate line of credit for as long as the eye can see. It propped up the stock market, and the rest of it, we just don't feel that much of an urgency about. So we're not going to do anything. We're probably going to lose the election anyways. So this is going to become Joe Biden's problem. Meanwhile, the Democrats are out there and they're, what they're pushing for is, some of it is good. States, municipalities are definitely going to need money, but subsidizing COBRA, that's a huge waste. It's couldn't be more inefficient. They're not talking about things like the post office and whatnot. I know that doesn't directly deal with coronavirus, but even if Joe Biden becomes president, he's becoming president 6 months from now. And and we've been in this for from March to August is the same amount of time from August to January. And it's been this bad up to this point. We're going to move into a phase soon where the administration is either, incapable of doing anything, or maybe after November, they're like, we're going to make this a nightmare for Joe Biden because that's their mentality. So is when we talk about looking at this, being conscious of the choices that we're making, is that going to make a difference in the context of what we're dealing with now? Like, I have no idea where we'll be in 5 months from now, but it can't be in a good place. And like you say, right now we need 300,000 contact tracers. 4 months ago, we would have needed, tens of thousands, maybe. Where are we going to be 4 or 5 months from now?
I think you're absolutely right. What I still haven't completely wrapped my head around is what actually creates political will to deal with this in our current environment. And it seems to be when the ICUs are overwhelmed, like at the local level, right? Like at the federal level, I agree with what you're saying completely. But at the local level, at least some municipalities and states, once ICUs kind of reach capacity, that's when they start getting freaked out and say, okay, wait a second, like, let's do something. So, I saw that in the state of Maryland, for example, and now I live in the state of Maryland. And so in the beginning, it looked like our ICUs were going to get overwhelmed. And so Governor Hogan said, okay, let's shut down, because that was something he did not want to see. He thought that would look really bad for him and, of course, be bad for the state. But now we have cases that are going right back up to the levels they were before. The deaths are going up right back to the levels they were before. However, we now have extra ICU capacity. So his response is, well, let's just keep on keeping on. We don't need to change too much, or maybe just around the edges, because the ICUs aren't getting overwhelmed. So that seems to be the one thing that kind of makes municipalities act. Of course, by then it's like way too late to actually, get in. The only thing you can do then is do the hard shutdown. And the hard shutdown is very costly. Not just to the economy, but people lose their lives in the hard shutdown because, you get a heart attack and you don't go to the hospital because you're scared to go. So you have all this kind of follow-on effect. And I think, unfortunately, we're just going to have to muddle through with this, what we're doing now. I mean, to me, it's become like school shootings where everyone says it's horrible, but we're at a complete stalemate and we don't move forward at all, even as the problem gets worse and worse. And I think that's what we're seeing. And, if we actually get a government in November that has at least the political will to do something about it, we can start to slowly dig ourselves out. But you're right, it's going to be a much bigger problem then. The one tiny silver lining to all this is, every epidemic collapses at some point on its own, whether or not you do anything at all, because the pathogen just runs out of susceptible individuals. People have either got it already, or they had it and died, or they had it and survived, right? So right now, probably 15% of Americans have had this thing, considering that, if we take into account that probably 10 times more people have actually had it than are reflected in the numbers. That means around 10, 15% of the population has had it. Once we get to, 40, 50%, then the virus doesn't even have anywhere to go, and you start to see a natural decline. And it's possible that we might get there, sooner rather than later because of the chaotic way we're responding to this thing.
There's also been, and I don't know if this is outside your portfolio, but there's also been some suggestion that there is an existing immunity because people have had some form of a coronavirus in the past. Someone has pointed out that we've not seen any municipality, any state, any country that has had an over 25% infection rate, which is strange. You would imagine that maybe there'd be one place that would, and maybe it'll be America, but it where things have been so botched, or the thing spreads like wildfire, and you can't get over that rate. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some municipalities where we do have, like Corona Creams. They did an antibody study there, and it was like over 50% of people had antibodies. So, that's approaching the level that you would need so that even if the virus is introduced into that community, it doesn't have enough places to spread. So it can't, kind of burst out into an outbreak. So I think it is happening on cells. I mean, we're not doing very good tracking of this. So, we're not doing surveillance studies. We're not doing like widespread antibody studies. So we don't really know. We're really so much in the dark with all of this. But at least on these, when we focus in on certain places that scientists have done a few studies, it does seem like there's some places where that might be happening. I mean, this is a very, very cruel way to deal with a pathogen. When you have tools you can use against it, and yet you just, don't use them and let a lot of people die to get to population immunity naturally. I mean, that's extremely brutal. And we'll have to live with sort of the moral implications of that for a long time. But I think it is possible that is where we're heading to, and that in certain places in the country that, we might already or be approaching it.
I want to get back to sort of the, trying to anticipate how we're going to react to this when we are sort of on the other side of it. But let me ask you this question too. One of the things that, how much do you know about the transfer of data from the CDC to, via the White House? When this was first announced in mid-July, people I spoke to were like, well, the CDC hasn't done that great of a job anyways, and most of the stuff we're relying on is sort of outside data. It's been pointed out to me, and I really don't know what to make of it, but coincidentally, around that day, around July 16th, 17th, when the data supposedly starts to move to the White House, we start to see a flatlining of, we're just putting up the thing right now. You can see this right around July 16th. It goes up to a peak, I don't know, maybe a day or two later on the 18th. And then it starts to flatline and even drop a little bit. And how much of that is I mean, I don't know. I'm not in these states where things are expanding significantly, but I'm a little bit surprised that it had, that at the beginning, prior to July 4th, in these places, people started to respond in such a, in a more responsible way. I find that hard to believe. What do you have any sense of like what the implications are of that switch in the way that we were collecting data?
I mean, I'm very skeptical of all the data that we're looking at. There's a lot of ways in which bad actors can fudge the data. It's because contagious diseases are hard to track, and that's been true for all of the infectious diseases of our past. So it's not peculiar to coronavirus. On top of that, we have just sort of the fog of war and, the chaos of this new thing that's overwhelming hospitals, and they don't know where to send their data, and they don't have the spreadsheets and the databases and set up and all of that stuff. So, and I think we have already seen a lot of evidence from the Trump administration that they would prefer the numbers to be different. And there's so many ways in which they can change things so that they are different. They've done that in the past with other disasters, like, the way data is collected around like who dies from hurricanes or who dies from antibiotic resistant bacterial pathogens. There's all these ways in which our data on these things are politicized. And so I would be very surprised if there aren't some political influences on the data collection we're getting right now. And I think that move to take away the hospitalization data from the CDC and put it, directly with the Department of Health and Human Services definitely stank of political influence. And my understanding is that, they're justifying it as saying, well, we're trying to streamline it. But in fact, they've contracted it out to some outside company that is actually making more of a mess of it, at least for the time being. So I think the best data for me as a journalist that has been reporting on infectious diseases for all these years, when you look at a new pathogen, what you want to look at in the end is excess mortality. Deaths always go up and down in a predictable fashion just because of the age structure of the population. And you can see if there's more people dying during a certain period, whether they, whatever they're dying of, it's ultimately, that's the number to me that's going to really tell the whole story of how many people died who would have otherwise lived during this period. And we can see in excess mortality already that there's a huge spike. Right. There's a huge spike starting in March, April, et cetera, and it's going on. I mean, excess mortality data comes out late. You don't get it right away. So this is something that's useful for looking backwards and seeing what happened. But, I think given all this, we saw, and even state by state, a lot of the state officials are trying to cover up or massage the data. CDC tried to massage the data on the testing when that was a whole stink. So, all of our numbers are soft. And that's been true for every other contagious disease in the past also.
There is another metric, too, that seems incredibly soft to me that is I think, really problematic. And that is we don't, everything at least, and I spend a lot of time reading about this stuff. All of my knowledge about the implications of getting this seem anecdotal in terms of the long-term or even the midterm health implications. I mean, I have a friend who she got it in the first, right in the middle of March. And apparently she still doesn't have a sense of smell. I mean, that's, that's 4 or 5 months out. That's a fairly long-term, issue. We're seeing there's, you read an article here about there are heart damage, perhaps, even if you don't, even if you thought you have recovered. I mean, we have doesn't seem to be any central repository that is tracking the health implications of people once they've recovered. We have that number, right? This is how many cases, this is how many recovered, this is how many dead, this is how many active, but we don't have any sense of like the long-term. I mean, is it 1 out of 5 people have long-term complications? 1 out of 3, 1 out of 10? We have no idea, right?
Yeah, and I think we won't until this thing sort of progresses further. And that doesn't surprise me so much because, when you have a novel pathogen, everyone's going to have an idiosyncratic response because as a species, we haven't encountered this thing before. So like in the past, we've encountered, you can see this in our genetic changes that, there'll be like the diversity of genomes around this one part of our DNA. And then a new pathogen comes in and basically wipes out a whole bunch of people who had certain kinds of genetic sequences. And then you get this homogenization. And so then everyone has, all the people who survive have a kind of similarity between them because everyone who is different, didn't make it essentially. And so the fact that we're seeing a lot of idiosyncratic responses to this pathogen doesn't surprise me because it is new. So there's going to be a lot of people who, they're going to just have a response that's not the same as everyone else's. And, characterizing that is very complicated and it's going to take time for all of that to come out. So, I don't think with any contagious disease, there's idiosyncratic responses. But for most of our pathogens, we all have some kind of immunity, at least even if I didn't ever get this particular strain of flu that we get this winter, like my grandmother did, because we've had these pathogens in our families like for generations. And that kind of weeds out certain sort of idiosyncratic responses because those people basically don't make it. And so that process is just starting now for us with coronavirus.
Okay. So lastly, let me ask you this, and it's probably a big question though, to make the last question, but you've written extensively about cholera and and Zika and Ebola. But I wonder if, and one of the things in the reading that I've been doing over the past couple of months is, sort of the one theme about the 1918 flu pandemic is just how much it seemed to have been erased from our national consciousness. I mean, obviously there, scholars are aware of it, but, I grew up knowing about the Great Depression and the Civil War. The pandemic never really, just sort of like maybe I heard it a little bit, but it wasn't a big topic. And apparently, Wilson never even addressed it. And now I'm getting the sense of like, in part why that is, because frankly, like I'm so sick of this that, if we get to the other side of this and I never mention a single word of it again, I will be happy. But what do you like with what we're talking about, having seen and maybe it was because, social sciences had not moved further enough, or maybe it was because during, at least the last pandemic that this country had to deal with, we were still sort of in the wake of the discovery of the germ theory or the development of the germ theory. That there wasn't enough time spent on like the sociological implications of a pandemic. But what do you anticipate? Like, what comes out of this when you start to talk about like the moral implications of the decisions that are being made here? Do you think that there is an opportunity for the real sort of like a real assessment of the sort of wellness of our society in terms of our ability to be resilient in what will inevitably be future pandemics? And if, what folks like yourself and others have been saying is the case, we're going to get more of these because of the nature of how we are essentially gobbling up nature.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, talk about historical amnesia, like, we've forgotten the 1918 flu until just now, but we also have forgotten that we have other pandemics going on right now. HIV was a brand new pathogen in 1982. No one had ever seen anything like it before, and millions of people got it. It is a pandemic. It is going on right now. People are still getting sick. People are still dying of HIV. So we still have a cholera pandemic going on right now, just a few hundred miles off the coast of Florida and Haiti in the Western Hemisphere. We don't really think about those because there are drugs and vaccines, at least for wealthy people. So, we don't even give them a second thought. as if those are risks in our lives anymore, because we don't, we can get a pill, we can get a vaccine. So why even think about it? So, it's true. We have forgotten the 1918 flu until now, but we've also forgotten these other pandemics that are actually going on right now besides the coronavirus pandemic. But in terms of your question, how will we emerge from this in the future after this whole thing collapses? My hope is that if we find out, if somebody can pinpoint that the reason why this virus spilled over into human populations has something to do with what I suspect, deforestation, which allowed bats to come into closer contact with humans and facilitate, hunting and selling them for food and all the other things that, humans do with bats that allows their microbes to come into our bodies. Those are all roughly implicated by deforestation, which is roughly implicated in our massive expansion of the industrial economy. That then we will start to see, like, okay, these are things that we should have public health controls on, so that when the next mining company says, you know what, we want to set up, this mine and cut down this part of the Brazilian rainforest, that it wouldn't just be environmentalists saying, no, don't do that because there's all these special species in there and it's really important to us, et cetera. It wouldn't just be indigenous communities saying, no, this is where we've lived for a long time, like you can't just cut it down. It would also be the global community saying, hang on a second, if you cut down those trees where the bats roost, they're going to come live in my backyard and my farm and my garden instead. And that's going to allow the microbes to live in their bodies to come into our bodies and make us sick. And for that reason, to add that whole other level of reason, of justification to constrain industrial expansion, I think that would go a huge way to protecting the public health and the environment generally. I mean, obviously these are problems that are implicated in a lot of the crises we face, not just the biological disaster of the pandemic, but climate change.
Right. I mean, this is all there's it's all part of, I guess, the broad umbrella of you need to include externalities in your calculations as to the risk reward scenario there, because when people when capitalism offloads the externalities and doesn't calculate them, and we don't realize that they existed until after the fact, that's when we all get screwed. Sonia Shah, the book is Pandemic: Tracking Contagions from Cholera to Ebola and Beyond. And your piece in the Nation magazine is Time to Tell a News Story of Coronavirus. We will link to both those at majority.fm. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Going to head into the fun half, where we will have fun with the analysis of the question, what happens when you pay people an unemployment benefit that is larger than their pay? How often do they decide not to go back to work because of that? As opposed to say, like, oh, I'll be risking my life. And then the other shocking thing is just like how little tens of millions of people make.
Yeah.
Just broadly speaking.
This like the insistence on maintaining this ability to coerce labor by keeping people in precarity even through this pandemic, it really makes me look at the way this country's championed the unemployment rate for the time I've been alive, as if it's kind of the elites gloating about how hard they're working us. But I don't know.
For a long time, too, we were told that the natural unemployment rate was something like 7%, like that you couldn't get employment rate that was lower than that.
Yeah.
But yes, but at one point Greenspan had said something to the effect of like, our job is to maintain a certain amount of insecurity amongst the working class, maybe broadly. I can't know exactly who he referred to.
Ryan Cooper also wrote a piece a month or two ago, citing a University of Chicago study using census data that found that the poverty rate decreased the most it has in recorded history since the 1960s.
When the unemployment insurance, the federal bonus unemployment insurance,
yes,
was distributed. Yes,
insane.
Wow.
And the thing is too is that like even on the terms of those officials who are claiming they want to save the economy, this is the best thing you can do for the economy, is to put money in the hands of people who are going to turn around and spend it.
Mm-hmm. There's a conversation between Smathers, a Florida senator, I think, and LBJ that I remixed a song to. And Smathers is talking about how he had one of his donors for the Democratic Party back then was this grocery store sort of oligarch in the Southeast. And he's telling him, like, we can't have Goldwater because then people won't have money to come to my store and buy groceries. Like, I need that as a business owner.
Right.
Exactly. And like after all these years, we finally got the Goldwaters in charge.
Yep.
Well, it's one of those contradictions inherent to capitalism that, hi, by the way, that
Jamie.
sort of a left liberal economic redistributive policy is designed to work against, so that capitalism is not crushed under the weight of its own contradictions and it can keep going, right? Because on the one hand, the idea that the Republicans are having is if you cut off any kind of help and if you impose enough austerity, workers will be forced to accept unacceptable conditions on the job, which right now includes a global pandemic, and they will not have any bargaining power. So they'll have to accept low-paying, unappealing work of the kind that is, readily available still in this economy. However, if those jobs no longer pay enough for them to consume things and continue to buy the things they need to live and reproduce themselves from day to day and generation to generation, it's going to be bad for the economy in a number of ways.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know that the Republicans, because frankly, it's not a contradiction. The first belief that you articulated is a flawed belief. I mean, yes, they want to certainly to have leverage and but in terms of protecting their economy, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Paying people money in this situation is the only thing that's going to keep the economy afloat. And the suffering that is going to come in the wake of this, I don't think is going to be limited to just the great unwashed, as it were. But
no, I mean, it's going to have all sorts of ripple effects, and we're already seeing that. But the basic drive, the basic imperative that capitalists have is to, get the maximum amount of work and surplus value out of people for the minimum amount of pay. And that is a drive that like there is some method to this madness that we are seeing. It's just, one of the internal contradictions, one of the death drives in capitalism that all of this good left liberal government policy is designed to be a counter tendency against.
Right. Right. I mean, I would like to see more of that left liberal good government. I don't even think that the Democrats are even doing that, frankly.
Yeah, no, they're not.
I mean, Joe Biden came out yesterday with, support for the HEROES Act, specifically mentioned the subsidies to Cobra, which is just, I mean, it's just I'm sorry. That is not even left liberal good. That's not.
No,
that is just
it's garbage.
That is just like that is. I mean, the Republicans would have offered that had the Democrats not. And then the failure of the post office. The post office, I think, is a really big deal that is ongoing right now. I've had multiple conversations with people who are waiting on packages. I went to the eye doctor to try and get to some new glasses, and they're like, "Yeah, it's like going to be 3 weeks because the post office is not getting stuff." And they have. It's unclear to me if they are, or if this is like one of the twofers, like they're going to sabotage the postal service because they want to privatize it and sabotage it because they want to make sure that vote by mail cannot be executed properly. It's probably a twofer, but who knows? But we will talk more about all of this and more in the fun half. Just a reminder, your support makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support the free show, and we give you extra content, and you make us all very, very happy. So if you are one of those people who do not have the resources right now, particularly in light of what's happening with the unemployment stuff, for whatever reason, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Have a little patience. We're way behind on this stuff, but we will hook you up. But if you are one of the people who do not have such financial concerns, please think about joining our supporters, as it were. Don't forget amquickie.com. You can find that on just about any device you have. It's free. Also, we got merch at the shop.majorityreportradio.com. Have we rolled out any of the posit line yet, Brendan?
We are in the final stages of design confirmation.
And that includes carpenter pencils.
That's correct.
For our huge carpenter contingency of woodworkers that listen to this program. So check that out. And as always, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Tomorrow, Nomi Key will join us, and you can check out her show right now at patreon.com/The Nomi Key Show or youtube.com, The Nomi Key Show. Check that out. And TMBS, Matt, what's the you can take in a couple of weeks off and then come back?
We're taking kind of we're doing a light show tomorrow. We're going to do a Q&A. So tomorrow night at the normal time, 7 p.m., David and I will be taking questions, and maybe Alicia Brooks too.
Okay.
But not a full show, but we'll be doing that. Yeah.
You can find at patreon.com/The Michael Brooks Show. And Jamie, the Antifada, what's happening?
Yeah. So this week we have a little boys chat because I went away for the weekend. Andy and Sean had on Jake Flores to talk about his new podcast, Why You Mad? And Theories of Comedy and Class War. They also had a very good interview with the writer for The Appeal and The Intercept, Tana Geneva. And she talks about, I'm just going to read this, the NYPD's permissive culture towards rapists and other abusers on the force, unfortunately celebrated by humorous challenge coins and nicknames like the Ass Man. So she talks a little bit about her reporting she's done on that, failures of Cuomo and DeBunglio's even tepid reforms, and they speculate on why it's been so difficult to get this problem under control and whether defund or abolishing police and prisons is the right approach. So check that out, patreon.com/The Antifada. It's out on Wednesday.
I think I read that report about the Ass Man guy. That's disgusting.
Yeah.
And Matt, what's happening on Literary Hangover?
Literary Hangover, we'll get to that at some point too. I'm not sure when. Maybe tonight or tomorrow we'll do a stream, but I'm not sure.
It's summer. We deserve extended times off right now. Somebody wanted to just ask me on the IM, is there a betting site for Majority Report versus Pacman drive. My money is on David. He is working multiple platforms. It seems like easy money. Jesus.
I mean, David's got. I mean, he's got the motivation and the business savvy.
He's got the business
savvy.
And the guy's got spreadsheets all over the place.
Exactly. He's got.
Folks, if you're listening to the show, go and subscribe to our YouTube channel because Ronald Reagan is creating a big stir with stoking the fires of a competition as to who will get to 1 million subscribers first.
He's the Don King of YouTube left channels.
Yeah. Did your parents ever like sign you up for like a 4K or something like that, and you just found out about it? Like, oh, after running this now? That's what I feel like.
No, my parents did not do that for me. I can assure you that. But Ronald Reagan's like the Bob Uecker of left-wing YouTube shows. Bob Uecker, you'd have to go back to and I'm talking specifically the ads. He would start the fights between fans of light beer being less filling or tasting great. And that is right. But in the meantime, I know for a fact that Pacman is worried that that Reagan has started a battle between us. I think Pacman is ahead of us by at least a couple thousand subscribers. Is that right?
About 1,000.
I think 1,000. Yeah.
Do we not have this up on the big board? We should have it ongoing tally.
Whoa,
there should be like there should be right here. There should be a YouTube. Folks, subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Go and do that. It's completely free. And every time you do, Ronald Reagan actually earns a pair of wings. So we're going to take a quick break. 646-257-3920 is the number. We'll be right back in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457-238-56-27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're not paying.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey! Shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Bunker Inspector IMs me. Hey, Sam, can I get a shofar? My son said his first word over the weekend. It was dada. I consider this a significant victory in my marriage against my wife. Certainly appreciate that framing, and therefore... There's a person who understands the proper perspective on parenting. It is, from day one, it's a competition as to who the child will take care of in the later years. That is basically what I have come to realize. Going to need my children to respond in that way. Here is Deborah Birx conceding that we are now in a new phase of the pandemic. One could call this phase as we messed up, and so now it's really almost incomprehensibly bad.
Yeah,
and,
it's called Phase F.
Yeah, exactly. We failed, and but here she is. She's gonna put a little smile on it.
Right, Dr. Birx, and I hear you, but it's clearly not working. I mean, we've been talking about outbreaks across the Sun Belt. You're warning now about a resurgence in states across the Midwest. In recent days, you've named 20, we're putting them up on the screen, 20 of the 50 states as places you're watching. So are we in a new phase of the pandemic? And if so, what are you going to do to change course?
I think those are two very critical questions because we are in a new phase, and that's why I really wanted to make it clear to the American people. It's why we started putting out governor reports directly to the health officials and the governors in every single state, because we could see that each thing had to be tailored. So each state has a tailored set of recommendations based on what we're seeing at the community level, what we're seeing relevant to the hospitals, and each of these responses have to be dramatically tailored. We are beginning to see an impact from the mitigation procedures that many of the state and local officials have put into place. But I want to be very clear, what we're seeing today is different from March and April. It is extraordinarily widespread. It's into the rural as equal urban areas. And to everybody who lives in a rural area, you are not immune or protected from this virus. And that's why we keep saying, no matter where you live in America, you need to wear a mask and socially distance, do the personal hygiene pieces. But more importantly, if you're in multi-generational households and there's an outbreak in your rural area or in your city, you need to really consider wearing a mask at home, assuming that you're positive if you have individuals in your households with comorbidities. This epidemic right now is different, and it's more widespread, and it's both rural and urban.
Dr. Birx, before we move on to some specifics, I just want to really try to get a handle on this, because what I'm trying to express to you, which is something that I know that you're hearing, people are panicked. People are worried. People don't understand why this is seeming to be completely out of control. Johns Hopkins University said, quote, this week, the United States is not currently on course to get control of the epidemic. It's time to reset. A couple of other medical agencies, associations said similar. So is it time for the federal government to reset?
Well, I think the federal government reset about 5 to 6 weeks ago when we saw this starting to happen across the South. And that's why we've done these rather than generic federal framework, we've gone to very specific state and local, city by city, county by county, showing out which counties and which cities are under particular threat and what mitigation has to be done. And what we're starting to see across the West and across the South, which the American people should find a little bit reassuring, is these mitigation efforts are beginning to work. And we can see it in Arizona with decreasing test positivity, decreasing cases, decreasing hospitalization, and we hope that decreasing deaths will follow. That is the sequence of events. So that's why we've alerted the yellow states. As soon as we saw a small increase in test positivity, that's why I've named those states and named those cities, because when it first starts to happen, it seems so innocuous. But people really
So,
need
Dr.
to take it seriously. When they see those first positivity go up in cases, you need to respond with significant mitigation efforts.
How does the person in charge of the White House's response to the coronavirus feel when we are 5 months into this and she's saying that people need to take this seriously? Like, she had one job, and that was to get people to take this seriously. It is stunning. I can't believe it.
Kind of a nice pivot that she made too, from the need for a federal response to the need for a county by county response.
Right. I mean, it is look, she's a religious fundamentalist, and she's retaining that mode of I guess thought and promotion, which is that we're not going to have a national response to this. We're not going to have a national response. We're going to keep pretending that there are these isolated islands of places in America that are not, that states are not contiguous, that people can't drive across the states, that people don't travel, that people don't. I mean, it is unbelievable. Some of these people, I feel like at one point there's going to be a question as to how much criminal liability there should be for the way that this government has handled this. Mm-hmm. Because now they're starting to bandy around 300,000 people dying by the end of the year. And the idea that they're still going, their entire, every response they have now still is built to justify their initial response.
Yeah.
That's what she's saying. Like, our plan of just looking at it county by county or state by state is working. Well, that's been the plan since the beginning, which is this is going to be a county by county, state by state situation.
It'll be tailored.
Yep.
Like a suit that you would get.
Like a Stitch Fix.
It irritates me because North Dakota, I've seen this from some of my family, because I've been, trying to scare them about this entire time, and they've been taking it seriously in that regard. But they went to a funeral, and we have family who aren't taking it that seriously. And my grandpa, 2 weeks ago, I heard he was at a meeting with some guy who was coughing. Turned out that guy had coronavirus. A week ago, or a little bit less than ago, I heard an update, and that guy's dead from coronavirus. He's one of North Dakota's coronavirus deaths. And my grandparents they've been isolated since then, and he hasn't, had any symptoms and anything like that. But it's just like, finally now maybe we can get some of these people to wear masks. Like, he was just at this meeting of old people and none of them were wearing masks. It wasn't just the guy with coronavirus. They just don't give a F. And it's just, Jesus. It's like, it is the culture to like be opposed to it. And now finally, at least from what I hear in North Dakota, maybe that's changing a little bit, because, people know somebody who died. That's ultimately what it takes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. They got to have personal experience. And even then, I'm sure there are people who will find a way to rationalize it away. And here's the problem with having this lady on CNN, right? Because if you're not listening that hard, it sounds like she knows what she's talking about. She's saying all the right words. She's using a very calm and professional tone of voice. And to the degree that people trust government officials, you're like, oh, yeah.
She seems nice lady.
The problem with CNN is it's like, oh, we're just giving the information from this health expert. No, really, the information you're passing along is that the Trump administration is handling this competently. That's the message that Birx is really on there to send. Mm-hmm.
Here is Mike Lee explaining, this is Senator Mike Lee from Utah. He is explaining what the problem is in this country, why we are in the shape that we're in at this moment. And of course, it's because too much reliance on government.
It still is something that we should worry about from a liberty standpoint. when they exercise these sweeping powers. When they say, I hereby declare that you can't go to work, or that you've got to wear a mask and a green hat and a face shield, or whatever it is that they want to do. For the simple reason that, number one, you don't always know.
This guy's such a pig. It's unbelievable. Green hat. Like the mask is just a sort of like, oh, everybody's going to wear underwear on their head today. That's how silly this is. This is just like a random exercise of power. Like, how effing irresponsible is it for that a-hole? I mean, if you want to make the argument that having protections that inhibit the spread of a disease to other people is a infringement upon liberty. Like, I don't know why he hasn't been on and on about smoking, like, in this regard too, right? I mean, smoking, there's a reason why in public buildings you can't smoke, because it inhibits other people's health. I mean, even his libertarian ideology, where your right to push your fist ends at my nose. Well, your right to aerosolize the virus during a pandemic ends when it starts to kill other people. How's that? But the idea that he would refer to as like face masks and shields and a green hat, as if it's just like some type of, these guys are just trying to see what they can make you wear to make you look silly. What a effing a-hole.
You remember when we covered the libertarian debate and people said we were unfair because those were just the kooks? It's like, no, right. This is what this is.
A senator from Utah. There's only 100 of these people, and here's one of them in the country. Continue.
Or whatever it is that they want to do. For the simple reason that, number one, you don't always know what state statutory or state constitutional authority pursuant to which they might be acting. In fact, they often don't know. If you dig into these things, very often they're just airballing this stuff. Not all the time, but sometimes they are. It's important to ask those questions. It's also important to ask, to the extent you're intruding on my liberty, even if it's not something that is constitutionally prohibited, and even if you do have statutory and or state constitutional authority to do what you're saying, is this intrusion into the liberty of the citizenry worth it? I think we've lost, as a society, the tendency to engage in this kind of critical thinking with regard to our government. We have societally been conditioned to accept the idea that government knows best. And I think it's important for us to push back on that.
You dumbass. Why don't you go make out with Louis Gohmert?
Yeah.
A little pushback.
Well, you're just because the government tells you that it's you could get coronavirus. Why don't you go hang out in a sauna with Louis Gohmert? Idiot! What an idiot! What an idiot! That type of he should be. Someone should sue that guy for going out there and saying this kind of stuff. It is insanity. It is absolutely insanity. The whole concept of you wearing a mask is an infringement upon your liberty is absurd. It is totally absurd.
They never remember about the NAP.
The what?
The non-aggression principle.
Oh, right. Right. Oh.
And here's why right-wing libertarians and anarchist types can't ever get along and shouldn't. Anarchists respect experts and they respect science on a level that these people don't.
This whole concept of that personal liberty is being infringed when someone says during a pandemic you need to wear a mask is just it's just sheer insanity. It's sheer insanity. Where's the whole thing where the Constitution is not a suicide pact? How come we only hear those guys when it comes to protecting the civil liberties of people who are not white?
Yeah. I like the pivot that he does where he says, even if it is constitutionally, allowed and does have legal precedent, we got to consider what liberty might think about this, of getting people infected.
Well, actually, true liberty is being able to use eviction courts to throw out a tenant during a pandemic depression, actually.
Yeah. They're so full of crap.
It is such
It's
a pose.
so obvious.
It is such a pose. Here is Charlie Kirk on the Steve Hilton show. This is the Fox News host who apparently does not understand how the dynamic of the mask works. And Charlie Kirk, who, I don't know, maybe he's upset about his co-founder of Turning Points USA passing away from coronavirus. Maybe he is. He doesn't seem to think it's terribly important anymore, but here is Steve Hilton, 6 months into this, 5 months into it, whatever it is, still apparently either completely lying to his audience or incapable of understanding the dynamic of a mask. When you inhibit the source of the virus like this, you cut down on how many people around you can get it.
Let's talk about the mask specifically, because in case anyone is watching this and saying, well, this guy ranting about the shutdowns, he's got nothing positive to say. Remember, we did show after show on this at the beginning of this, and we had doctors on and others with a concrete strategy, and specifically on masks. I remember we had a particular focus on that, which is actually the people who should wear the mask, the medical masks that really protect you, not just a cloth face covering, are people who are vulnerable. Find out who's really vulnerable, which underlying conditions we're talking about. They should wear the mask to protect them. Plus, if they wear the mask, people will know that they shouldn't come close to them. Everyone else who's not vulnerable can go about their business. That was all thrown out the window. Let's put up this headline from this week. The Dutch government, it was their National Institute of Health, the exact same organization that Dr. Fauci is part of here in America. The National Institute of Health in Holland has said there is no scientific evidence that masks do any good whatsoever, and therefore they are not asking people to wear a mask. So, what are we supposed to make of that, Charlie?
Well, you said it best. I mean, we're supposed to protect the vulnerable. It's so Orwellian what's been happening. We did the opposite. We put infected people in nursing homes. And then we keep the schools closed. Yeah. I mean, we did the exact opposite of what would have been actually what we should do, which is you shouldn't let anyone into the nursing homes. You should double down your efforts for the most vulnerable and keep the schools open. We did the exact opposite of what would have made sense. And look, I think there's a bigger issue here, Steve, of civil liberties and overreach of government. And Attorney General Bill Barr said it best, which is
just like, here is this unbelievable hypocrite liar. Charlie Kirk, young kid, very young relative to me. Why is his hair so long? Why is his hair so long? It's because he won't go get a haircut. There are places, undoubtedly, if you are Charlie Kirk, where you can go find a haircut. No doubt whatsoever. With all the travel he does, no doubt in my mind, he has gone by hair salons or barbershops or whatever it is. Go in there, get your hair cut. You're not vulnerable. But he's lying. He's sitting in a studio. There's nobody else around there. I can guarantee it. He's afraid, just like the president of the United States. Why are you testing everybody? Why are you testing everybody who gets on the plane? They're liars. They are knowingly pretending like there's nothing to be worried about. And sending this message out to their viewers. It is so reprehensible. And again, we don't know the long-term implications of this disease, even if you are not amongst the vulnerable population. Like I said, I know people who got it late 30s, early 40s. 4 months later, still don't have a sense of smell. Who knows what other lingering implications are? But continue on with this.
Also, Rotterdam and Amsterdam did their own individual mask policies in defiance of the Dutch state.
So, in other words, probably the a significant portion of the population, if not half, half.
One of the world's major port towns in Rotterdam, and one of the world's biggest tourism places in Amsterdam, taking a different tack. So, just to note that.
Such liars. Go ahead.
Sort of what would have made sense. And look, I think there's a bigger issue here, Steve, of civil liberties and overreach of government. And Attorney General Bill Barr said it best, which is the Constitution is not suspended in the times of a crisis. So if you're going to have massive statewide mandates where you have to do something very specific, which I think in some ways is very controversial, then there has to be a really good reason to do that. And then you have to be also willing to self-correct if new data presents itself. The whole point of being in science, Steve, is to be anti-dogmatic, right? And so just to say that this is working all the time without self-correcting, especially with something of a mandate that some would say violates the precedent of civil liberties.
Yes, science. What about civil liberties?
Unbelievable.
It's crazy that he would try to make the mask thing about civil liberties right now at a time when the state is cracking down pretty hard on political dissent. I wonder how he feels about that in relationship to the uprising for Black lives.
It is stunning how they have no problem with federal policemen without insignias, cobbled together, going and pulling people off the street into unmarked vans. That is not a concern of liberty. But the idea that health officials would say, wear a mask is.
I wonder if we're getting all these liberty argument clips today just because of what happened with pulling troops back in Oregon on Thursday. Like they've just been holding this in their pocket until that clears over.
Where it's not as like nakedly hypocritical.
Yeah. It's a bit too much, giving them a bit too much credit, but
yeah.
Let's do one more. I mean, this is just unbelievable. It's just, these people are just insane. It's just like, they don't care. They do not care. Can you imagine, like, do you want to bet what Judge Jeanine Pirro is doing? Do you want to bet how careful she's being when she goes about the world in terms of this?
No. I mean, to be fair, some of these people are getting COVID.
Some of them are. And you know what?
Rest in peace, Herman Cain.
I congratulate them. At the very least, I'm not going to celebrate Herman Cain's death, but I will say at least he walked the walk.
Yeah, man. Don't write checks your ass can't cash.
That's right. I mean, if you're going to go out there and you're going to say that masks are for losers and they're going to inhibit your liberty, you got to take it the whole way and show us that you are exercising your liberty to die from COVID as a way of really putting I have all the respect in the world for you, Herman Cain, for walking the walk. You did it. You owned the libs big time. But like you say, I'm sure you've said many times before, there's no free lunch. And so there you go. Here's Judge Jeanine Pirro, who I would bet in a million years is not going to walk into a situation in Westchester, wherever she's doing her show out of, like in her garage, is going to walk into a situation where, strangers are not wearing masks.
Joe Biden is afraid of him. He'll use a pandemic. I think it's hysterical when he and his wife come out together and they're wearing their masks. They've been housed together since the pandemic started, and they're wearing masks together when they come out. What is the point of the mask? The point of the mask is to basically kind of dehumanize. It's to, frighten people. You don't know who's behind the mask. It's to give people cover. It's exactly what the anarchists and the protesters need. It strikes fear. There's something going on. There are all kinds of subliminal messages to that mask. And, he's always in that black mask.
That's so funny. Biden's trying to take the back seat in this election so much that he wants to dehumanize himself in this campaign.
Antifa Biden.
Yeah, Guy Fawkes Biden.
So poetic, right? About the mask. like she's writing a dissertation on like all of the implications, the sociological implications of the mask. I mean, it's just, these people are insane.
She's vibing.
Lunacy.
It looks like she's in some sort of law office, like 30 meters underground.
She's in her library. Why doesn't she go out? Like, what? It's so dehumanizing for her to be just
do live shows.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Get out there. Get out with the people. See the people.
I think all these guys should go to Sturgis in 2 weeks in South Dakota and join them all.
Fox News live from Sturgis. I'm sure the governor would love to facilitate that.
Oh my God.
Well, actually, people should get the hashtag going. Fox News live from Sturgis.
Yeah, do that.
That would be awesome. All right, let's go to the phones. Calling from a 308 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Jesus.
Hey, Sam, can you hear me?
Kowalski, are you on your tractor right now?
I am inside of a grain bin.
You're inside of a what?
A grain bin. Can you hear me
Oh,
better
yeah.
now?
Yeah, I can hear you better now. Of course. Just one of our many callers who call us from inside a grain bin. Okay. And apparently it sounds like they're loading some grain into the silo. Is that right?
Yeah. Anywho, not sure how well my reception is coming in, but I wanted to give you guys a YouTube channel recommendation.
Okay. How about youtube.com/Sam
you guys heard of
Cedar?
the Cynical Historian?
The Cynical Historian?
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay, I highly recommend his channel. I recently became a Patreon supporter of his because he was doing a live stream and answered a question perfectly for me. So he recently had a video out on the history of police in the United States. I think your viewers would really enjoy. So, yeah, just wanted to give him a larger platform.
Kowalski, does he take phone calls from people in grain bins?
I doubt it, but you know who I know
okay.
would never take a call from a grain bin?
Who?
David Packman.
That's right. Good
That is
point.
why, as a member of the GOP, I am officially putting in the paperwork to cancel David. I would advise all Majority Report people who are subscribed to David to unsubscribe for at least a month or two until we got him canceled.
Wait a second. Don't do that. Don't unsubscribe from David. He'll be upset. Do not do that. But I would subscribe. I would develop a sock puppet account and subscribe to me twice. That's what I would do. We don't have to take away from David to win in this race. That's all I would say.
See, that's why you guys can't win elections, and the Republicans can. We're willing to do the dirty work. Man.
That's true.
Like, let millions of people die for an economy, and actually, I kind of fail to see how my corn's going to be worth anything if people aren't buying food.
Well,
Maybe we didn't think this one through.
Maybe. Is your corn specifically for feed or for what?
It's non-GMO, so it is what will go directly into food products.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well,
that's about all I had. I'm sure my cell reception is absolutely terrible, and I need some water because I've already gone through 5 liters, and I'm still thirsty. So I'll catch you guys later. Have a good one.
Thanks, Kowalski.
Wow. That's a flex, telling us how much water he's drinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of water.
I need to work on that. He's making me feel pretty bad. I thought I was doing all right with drinking water.
Calling from an 818 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. Dave from Jamaica. How you guys doing?
Dave from Jamaica. What's on your mind, Dave?
Not much. I might have missed the timing for this, but I remember you guys talking about the Times reporting. Was it the Times on aliens and whatnot?
Yeah.
And I guess to kind of give it the political lean, and I know the scientific lean why I'm skeptical, but the political lean. I remember in the past that usually when they had some unidentified flying object or something, and you have these military types in a room discussing it. Like any other workplace, you have one person that's kind of more conspiratorial. And I think I don't remember where I watched this, but they have they use these government bodies tend to use that. So like you have one guy in the room who's a little more conspiratorial, and then they float the idea, well, it's aliens, right? And then knowing that guy is going to spread it, because I think they prefer to have more disinformation out there, so people are distracted by, well, flying green men more than actual shit that the military does. What's your guys' thoughts on it?
I mean, I don't know in this specific instance if that's the case. And I don't know that, I mean, we're not living in an era where there is a particular, I think, heightened awareness of such things, right? I mean, it seems to me there have been different times where we have been more conscious of things like drones and about the U.S. drone policy. Trump's not getting that. I mean, I think, broadly speaking, I think there is definitely value that they put out conspiracies as a way of both disempowering people and sort of shifting attention. I don't think that's happening right now. Maybe it is in something smaller than that. Maybe there's some internal machinations amongst like defense contractors that we're not necessarily privy to, that people find it beneficial to put this stuff out there now. But I don't think they're doing that. I mean, right now we're at, as far as I can tell.
Sorry, go ahead, Sam. I didn't.
Well, I mean, if that's their strategy, I don't know why they would deploy it now. Let's put it that way.
Well, I guess I kind of view it like the same way, like when the media listens to police stories and take it as gospel. So I kind of feel like that's the same kind of relationship going on. And then also the fact that on the more the scientific level, if you're an alien, whether or not you can travel faster than the speed of light, or you can have people sit down in a ship for thousands and thousands of years, it seems kind of weird that you'd go to some rinky-dink planet for resources. I mean, it would be, I'm talking scales of energy, it just doesn't make sense.
I don't know. I think like,
I'm very skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little skeptical too, but I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the call, Dave, but I mean, I don't know how. I don't know how. Like, I don't. It seems to me it would be very difficult to put yourself in the minds of aliens and say, like, why would you come here? I mean, who knows? Maybe they just come and they're like, you guys, you're gonna find this hard to believe, but you guys are the only ones. Like, coal is just not available anywhere else. Or whatever. I mean, who knows? Like, why would you need coal? Well, we're very, very specific about how we barbecue, and we have the resources to travel anywhere in the world, and so we're here. Like, I mean, who knows, right? Like,
I think the aliens are going to come and they're going to be like, do you guys know that you're on pace to basically destroy your entire environment? And we'll be like, yeah, we knew that. We just haven't really, sat down to it yet, but we're going to get to it.
That's on our to-do list. So we're going to deal with that. I mean, who knows what it is like, I don't know. It could be just, like where, somebody from the West shows up in a remote area of the world to find gold, and the people who are living there, it's just like, what? Why? Like that type of dynamic. Who knows?
Yeah.
They're here. They're watching us. They want to give us space communism, but they haven't seen that many signs that we're ready. So, everybody should get on that.
I think it could also be they're here and they're just laughing and they're just like, this is unbelievable.
They have a whole bunch of popcorn.
Yeah. They're just like, they cannot believe how badly we are at this. Calling from an 845 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Sam, it's Lauren, and I am calling from my little corner of the 19th Congressional District in New York. How are you?
Teacher Lauren, how are you?
Oh, I'm okay. I may have to abandon the teacher part of my name, though, after reading over the patchwork of reopening plans for school districts in New York, which were published last week. That's actually what I'm calling to talk about. Because over the weekend I came to the difficult decision that unless I get hired by one of the districts that are going virtual for the first month at least, I'm not teaching this year. So the state, laid out guidelines for reopening, but I could drive between 20 and 40 minutes in any one direction and be in a district that is going virtual exclusively for the first month, doing a hybrid approach where, you split the student body in two and stagger which days they're in school and which days they're not. And one district is just going all out, 5 days a week for K through 6, albeit with limited class size. I think they're maxed out at 15 kids per classroom. But, I just saw this Forbes article on how young children are actually more efficient spreaders of the virus than adults, that in their sinus passages, they have viral loads 10 to 100 times that of adults.
Is that right?
And I'm just, I'm flipping a little bit. I'm not going into a school building. I'm scared of how many friends I'm going to lose this year. And, if you're in New York or anywhere really, but, I'm in New York, so that's why this is on my mind. Don't send your kids to school. And, if you're a teacher, start talking to your union, start talking about a strike, because for all the differences that I've noticed in the reopening plan, there is one thing they have in common, and that is I saw no language about testing for faculty, staff, or students. They are just throwing us into a big experiment, and I am terrified of what the results will be. And, if that means that, me and my master's degree are just going to hang out over here and not teach for a while, then, so be it.
Is the Forbes piece that you were talking about, is that the one, how at least 44% of young people at a summer camp caught the coronavirus?
No, that's a different one. This Forbes piece, I can email it to you, but they looked at two studies. One was out of Chicago, and one was out of Italy.
What is the headline?
The Italian study is waiting peer review.
What's the headline? What's the headline?
Oh, hang on.
Of that piece.
Let me. I'm looking it up right now. It's new evidence suggests young children spread COVID-19 more efficiently than adults.
Wow. That's that is definitely contrary to what we've been hearing.
Yeah, it's kids 5 and under are like little super spreaders, as they are with all viruses and illnesses. And kids, 6 to 17 are just as contagious as adults. So, the idea that we can safely go back into schools even at half capacity is some fantasy shit. And, if there is still a classroom open by Thanksgiving break, I will be stunned.
That is sort of my sense as well. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it to do 2 weeks, spread it out, 2 weeks with the kids, spread it out over the course of a month, maybe a week, just so that people are like, hi, I'm your teacher. See you online. Bye. I don't know.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, I don't know. I am so just befuddled by all of it. And
yeah,
I
mean, check out, look at, sorry, Sam. I was going to say, look at the various school districts that are, near you geographically and read their different reopening plans. It's like there is no consistency.
Well, and I, it's hard to blame them, because there's no resources to do this. There has been, it's hard enough getting ready for the school year for a school when everything is completely, when 80% of it's completely predictable. I mean, it's hard enough, in a place like, let's say, New York City, to get a sense of how many kids are you going to have in your school from year to year. Like they can see to a certain extent, like, oh, this, the entering class this year is huge. We're going to need to create more capacity down the road, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's a very hard thing to do. The idea that there are even, and this is, in the wake of like all sorts of cuts in terms of resources, it's just, it is like, but everybody has their liberty, and I'm just shocked at the failure of our society to deal with this. It is just, it is shocking. I appreciate the call though, Lauren, and good luck. Keep us updated as to what you're going to do.
I will do. It was good talking to you, Sam.
You too. Bye-bye. I mean, just horrible. Putting teachers into this situation where there's no confidence that, and administrators for that matter. I mean, that call that we got from
Poconos,
the Poconos school board. I mean, I'm having trouble making decisions for my two kids and have every advantage in doing so. And it is still like a horrible decision to try and make. It's horrible. The whole thing is just a nightmare.
I wish I could say that I'm shocked, but I'm not.
The line about the no testing was particularly troublesome, I thought. I feel like that's kind of the tell in where this is headed.
What, they're not doing any testing. I mean,
if you're going to put people in this position, the least you can do is say we have a robust system to help, contain and deal with this. But obviously they don't.
Absolutely. And there should be, mechanisms for, like, what is the mechanism you're sending? Like, I can tell you this right now, like, we're a month out from where I'm supposed to be sending my kid to school. There is, as far as I can tell, no formal mechanism in which to inform anybody in the school that I just found out that I have coronavirus, let's say. There's no mechanism to report that. There's no mechanisms that have been set up. Even the most basic stuff that you would want, even opt-in stuff so that our liberties can be protected.
This country doesn't want to know.
It's just insanity.
This is one of those areas where a competent liberal bureaucracy would actually make a pretty big difference.
Without a doubt. I mean, there are all sorts of structural problems that we have here, but a functioning government could at the very least mitigate some of the near-term problems on some level.
I mean, just focusing on comparative governance around the world, I mean, is enough. That's your material right there.
Calling from a 650 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Terry from Santa Barbara.
Terry from Santa Barbara. What's on your mind?
First, I wanted to give a little PSA. One thing that's bothered me, sometimes when people get their call picked up, they ask, if they're on the line. Just dive into it, just take the leap of faith. Just a note.
All right. Well done. Appreciate that. Of course, you had your own intro, which also was not diving into it, but be that as it may, continue.
Oh, but yeah, no, by that I just mean dive into, say hello and don't ask if you're on the phone.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so I wanted to mention, I've been listening to the Citations Needed podcast recently. And one thing that struck me with the recent passing of Michael, rest in power, is an episode where they talked about kind of common sense and where that comes from. And they actually had a scholar on talking about Gramsci's work and how common sense in his from his perspective wasn't so much about like what's the obvious solution to a problem. It's just the sort of societal consensus on problems, and what resonated with me is that it seems like that may have been what Michael's overall project, the effect he was having or aiming to have, was to just build a new common sense for the left, and to sort of infiltrate normie society with that new kind of more coherent perspective, and try to win the battle of high level important ideas.
Yeah, I mean, Michael was definitely a Gramsci fan. Certainly, we talked about it a lot.
Appreciate the call.
Thanks.
Thanks for getting right into it. Here is a congressman from Texas who is upset because the Republicans want to provide no more than 70% of someone's wages when they cannot work in the context of this pandemic, where you have already millions of people who are looking at eviction. Remember, the eviction moratoriums didn't say like we're paying your landlord the rent, or we're abolishing rent. It's just simply saying like you can defer that payment until the drop dead date. And by drop dead date, we really mean drop dead, because we know that something like 40% of the country can't even raise $400 at a time where you don't have a pandemic for an emergency. The idea that someone would have thousands of dollars to pay their back rent after 6 months of not working is just absurd. It's just patently absurd. And here is this congressman who is just upset because he says the Democrats won't negotiate in how little money we should give people.
What do you make of this? Nancy Pelosi, in that soundbite we just played, said we are unified on the $600 a week. But then the $600 expired midnight on Friday. So Republicans said, let's extend it for one more week until we can work out this agreement on what we're going to give Americans going forward. And Democrats rejected that. So what does that tell you?
Well, I think it speaks for itself, right? I think the American people are seeing Democrats refuse to even play ball, right? To even just say, all right, fine, let's have a week extension and let's move forward to get something that will actually work. But again, I talk to any of the businesses. I mean, I represent 2,300 restaurants with 53,000 employees. I get phone calls every single day saying, please do not repass the $600, because it's making it to where we can't hire people back. It's paying people not to work rather than to work, and it's killing our businesses. We have a barbecue place in New Braunfels, Texas, that I represent. Been open for 75 years. They just posted a sign that they're shutting their doors permanently. Harvard said 110,000 small businesses are going to close permanently. You don't want to know what? 45% of black businesses have closed over the last five months. Where are the people who care about those black lives? Is the NBA going to put that on their jersey? Are they going to put the name of the 1-year-old black baby killed in Chicago, or the 8-year-old girl killed in Atlanta?
They're not allowed.
19-year-old
that wasn't among the list. Hey, Chip, that was not on the list of things that they could put on their jerseys, like Free Hong Kong or China. You're abusing, or the players in the academies, which we sponsor.
That's a little long for NBA jersey, to be fair.
Yeah, I love how they go from there is too much unemployment. We'll get to the fiction that they're trying to push, but I love how quickly they get to a resentment of black people.
Yeah, it's a fact about how this pandemic is hurting black businesses worse. It's hurting everybody, obviously, but hurt black businesses worse. And rather than go into why that might be happening still, because I thought structural racism was all dealt with because of MLK, they go into look at the hypocrite millionaire black athletes.
Exactly. And I would also like to remind people that the black community has been hardest hit in terms of deaths and in terms of cases of coronavirus. And that is because they ended up having to go into, well, there's a whole myriad of reasons, including, less hospitalization in those neighborhoods very often. But also more folks who had to go into work, less support. Wasn't because the businesses were drying up. It was because they were going in and working. Mm-hmm. And the idea that these businesses are closing because they can't get employees. I want to know the one business that is closing because they can't get employees to work, as opposed to people are not coming in because they don't want to die from during a pandemic. I would bet, I'm sure there is a business out there who's saying, like, we just can't get workers. We're going to have to close permanently. I'm sure there is a business, maybe 2 or 3. But the idea that there are businesses closing because they can't get people to hire, as opposed to they can't get customers, is absurd. It is absurd. And the idea that they can go on there with straight faces and say this and sell this to the American public is just bizarre. But it is sort of poetic how it really is just like it goes immediately from, I'm a congressman from Texas and I got a barbecue place that's shutting down because they can't get barbecuers. There's so many people lined up to eat their barbecue, but they can't get anybody to cook it. They're going to have to close after 75 years. And it's really, I mean, come on, black people.
Yeah, amazing. And he had to throw in a little jibe at China there, as if any of these people care about state violence and repression anywhere in the world.
Right, exactly. Let me show you what a hypocrite Black Lives Matter is, because I've got a barbecue place that can't hire anybody and they can't go to work. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Here is Joe Concha on that same Fox and Friends program. And he is upset that what he perceives to be the Democrats' desire to not have any debates. I certainly can understand why they wouldn't want to have a debate. Why should they? I don't think, I think for the most part, Joe Biden is way up in the polls. I think it is a disservice, frankly, to the American public to not have a debate. I think, we deserve to have a debate, but I can see why Democrats don't want to do it, because they think that Donald Trump is going to lose. So why give him any opportunity? But I think there is some confusion about the word cancel.
And look, we want Joe Biden doing fact-checking during debates. He said during one debate during the primaries, 150 million people had been killed by gun violence in this country, or, half the population. He also recently said that 120 million people had been killed by COVID-19. Yeah, that's the guy that I want fact-checking. So, look, it's not just cancel culture now. Now we're advocating canceling the presidency, or canceling things, a tradition that we've seen all the way back during the television era, presidential debates for 80, 90 million Americans to see. In October.
Right. That's their best argument, that it's a TV tradition.
It's not just cancel culture anymore. Like, what are you talking about?
It doesn't even occur to them to say something to the effect of the American public deserves to hear the visions of these two people as to what they will do with the country. I mean, they don't even pretend that's what this is about.
I mean, if you're a Fox News viewer and you see this and you have any understanding of what's going on, it's so insulting to your intelligence that they're just cramming these words together to be like, oh, let's foment some outrage here.
Exactly. We use it's more cancel culture. The whole cancel culture thing is just fine. It's driving me insane, because this is all just it's just PC. It's just anti-PC stuff. It's the same freaking stuff.
Tale as old as time.
Huh?
Tale as old as time.
It really is. It's just pushback on, somebody who who was that player? He was going around. They were talking about him today.
Recent?
Where is it? Shoot. I think I just.
What sport?
I think it's funny
basketball.
how it's rebounded on top of like everybody who signed the list, particularly the whole Barry Weiss saga. And I mean, I think it's almost kind of funny how the more they articulate that stuff, the worse it is for them. I don't know.
Yeah, and if you're a leftist and you find yourself on a list of names full of disingenuous right-wing hypocrites, you might want to take a second look at what you're signing on to.
I just love the argument about like the slippery slope, because like that, like if you're canceling, if you're canceling these people now, and I don't know who gets canceled. I mean, frankly, I'm not even quite clear on what that means. Beyond
some people signed a petition against Steven Pinker saying, he should be stripped of some sort of credential because he talks a lot of nonsense.
I mean, that is horrible. Why would you want someone stripped of a prestigious title just because they're saying stuff that is demonstrably ridiculous? If it's not demonstrably ridiculous, then guess what? Don't do it. But the idea that first they come for Steven Pinker and then they start coming for the left. I got news for you. They've already come for the left.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why we hear about cancel culture, is because they're not coming exclusively for the left anymore.
Yeah,
that's the only reason why, because they're not coming exclusively for the powerless anymore.
Yeah, I mean, what do you call it when the FBI murders Fred Hampton or any number of Black radical leaders? Is that cancel culture? What do you call it when they decide to cancel democratically elected governments in Latin America? It's so broad as to be meaningless.
Or Kaepernick. It was Muhammad Abdul Rauf.
Oh yeah.
Who was an NBA player. And he would not stand in line for the national anthem, was fined, and I think he was drummed out of more or less. I don't know what happened to him, but or Kaepernick, where was people talking about cancel culture, as if this was a societal problem then, and he was legitimately canceled. Like he lost his means of supporting himself based upon his politics in a venue, or I should say in a profession that had nothing to do with that. Steven Pinker's not being, people are not trying to get him stripped of a title because, they don't like the way that he dresses or something, or, something completely unrelated to that title.
Yeah. Or as a pangloss, basically.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just absurd.
No,
it is. That's why you never hear anybody talk about how PC culture is ruining everything, because they just have a different name for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do think we've put our finger on the two most relevant things, which is one, we had Vincent Bevins on the show to talk about the Jakarta method and the mass murder of people ideologically leftist, and varying degrees of that happened all around the world within living memory, including in this country. And now we also have a democratic communications medium like Twitter where people can talk. And so, yeah, you have to run something like Persuasion, where it's a walled garden where you can decide that, the most troubling time in free speech is now and not the Jim Crow era.
Yeah. There's no ombudsman either out there trying to make sure that the left and the right are treated the same. There's no one whose job that is. There's nobody doing that. They're going to treat the left like crap no matter what. I'm talking about the people with actual power. So we got to fight back however we can, folks. But now the definition of cancel culture is even broader, right? To bring it back to the clip, it's not just smashing together J.K. Rowling getting angry comments on her transphobic blog posts with some random worker who gets fired for saying a slur on Twitter, which are already fairly disparate phenomena with fairly disparate causes, I would say. It's also just canceling things in general, right? Cancel culture is when you want to not have something.
Right. Well, I'll tell you something. What's also stunning to me is we are living in an era for the past month where, for the first time in the history of this country, it is illegal now in 20 some odd states, or I should say all the states, but prior to a month ago, it was not illegal in about 25 states to fire someone because they're gay. It's still, and I think hopefully the court cases will bear this, it's still perfectly fine to boot someone out of their home because they're gay or because they're transgender. But think about the absolute deafening silence about that amongst these people. Where is their publication or their letter? Where are they actively, that to me seems like a pretty big cancellation. You're going to get fired because I found out that you are you're a man and you're in love with a man, or you're a woman and you're in love with a woman, or because you are trans. I mean, that to me seems like real cancel culture. The rest of this stuff is just people with power complaining that they're losing it in some way. Let's go to the IMs. Gregory, looking like a snack today, Sam. Thank you. Not 100% sure I know what that means, but I'll take it. Cold Feet Chowder. Wearing my I'm losing it, bro, drinking my justcoffee.coop coffee, wondering when I can buy my new Cedar for Senate 2022 yard sign. Well, I wouldn't. That wouldn't be until January of 2021. Comrade Cat. Michael was a big influence on me. After listening to MR and TMBS, I started a union campaign at my place of work. Unfortunately, I was fired by Columbia Sportswear for just that. How's that for cancel culture? This is just the beginning of my involvement activism. Thank you for all that. And Michael will be missed. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Jay Schneid, Sam and MR crew, thanks for all you do. I share many of the sentiments expressed by listeners with regard to Michael's unfortunate passing. He was taken far too early, and agree with you that he was just hitting his stride. His future was bright. This helped ease the pain for others. I described what happened to Michael to my mother, who nursed for 49 years. And she has witnessed this exact same countless times. There's not a thing you can do to stop it. He felt no pain. He just left this world and whatever is next. I will miss his witty sense of humor and impressions like so many others have said. However, I have to say that it was Lindsey Graham and Mitt Romney that really had me in stitches to the point of nearly driving off the road more than once. Namaste, Michael, and to all of you. P.S. Sunset Lake gummies have completely changed my life. My sleep issues are gone, and the tincture is very helpful when my work stress flares up. Many thanks to you for turning me into it. Just place my third order. God bless, Joseph.
Wow.
The sleeping stuff is good. I definitely smoke some before sleep, and it's interesting.
I am also now like, and again, they made no claims to this to me. I did it out of like just sheer desperation. But I use the tincture and the salve on my hands with my eczema and on my ankles, because if I get wet, if my hands get wet in like gloves, then I get it on my hands. I have some weird thing, I don't know what it is, that sets it off, and it is incredibly like itchy and painful, and to the point where like literally I put anything on it at any, I tried everything, and the CBD helps it. Not only like relieves the symptoms. Now I don't know, like because my eczema is weird, but I am like recommending it to people now for that. Sam Ceter, not Cedar, Ceter. Hi all, I just became a member this weekend. I was thinking, it was after thinking to myself, I should have supported Michael for his great work while he was still here. Not going to make that mistake again. Thanks for all you do. Thank you very much. We'll give you one of these. WJ Bill, who will prosecute the criminals of the Trump regime all the way back to Tom Price? I mean, My
the Lord
first
God Almighty.
My first inclination would be to say that they're not going to. My second inclination is that if there is a single smart politician in the Senate and in the House, they will make prosecuting these people their signature issue. They could get away with anything. Like, you know, like you could have the most sort of conservative. In fact, I wouldn't be, you know, you won't see a Republican do this because Trump still will own the Republican Party. But I can see sort of like a corporate-minded Democrat doing this as a way of just sort of like building their bona fides across ideological lines within the Democratic Party.
Yeah, that's the resistance lane.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold my breath.
I mean, I don't think that Biden's going to do it, but I think that like there's an opportunity for somebody there to make an issue of it. I don't know if that will come of anything, but
Yeah, and all of the architects of the Iraq War are in jail right now.
well, but that's my point is that was a more sort of like a wasn't so low hanging fruit where
Yeah, that was Empire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. No, believe me, I sat next to John Conyers on a stage at Town Hall, and he had an impeachment book this big for and it was Nancy Pelosi who put the kibosh on that very proudly. She was very proud of herself.
They're so smug. You know who's going to prosecute these ghouls? The glorious proletarian revolution.
Well, I hope it comes soon because a lot of these guys are going to try and escape by dying. Left of centrist. Hey, MR crew, like Matt and Brendan, I'm also a former Knights of Columbus free throw champ. What are your thoughts on an MR charity event, free throws to fight fascism? Could be a fun way to donations from marginalized community. Like what? How would you do that in the context of what's going on right now?
Yeah, we'd have to each find gyms and record ourselves uncut.
Maybe a post-COVID.
You can take turns. One person does their free throws. They leave the gym. Otto Matlack enters the building. He does his, and so on.
I think I still got it.
I definitely don't. Promise.
There was at the memorial a friend of Michael's who claimed that Michael had a hoop game.
Yeah, I remember that.
I was very skeptical about that.
I know. I wish I could have tried that out.
I wasn't going to say anything at the memorial. Like, you know,
tennis, I believe, but
tennis, I totally believe. But basketball, I don't think so. He didn't seem very confident about it when we talked about playing. We should have done that. We should have had that.
Damn. Yeah.
I find it very hard to believe that he had a basketball game. Maybe as like a junior high kid.
The 8-foot hoop.
Thomas, Minneapolis. Got a poll sent to me that asked me 20 questions, basically comparing Kamala as VP as Warren as VP, and who made me more likely to vote for Biden and who I liked more between the two. Maybe a sign it's narrowed down to them. Who knows?
I mean,
I'd be surprised if it hadn't narrowed down to them.
I found out that Karen Bass had a secret history of doing stuff in Cuba. And then I was like, oh, maybe I like her now. And then I found out she was like a big evangelist for Scientology. Yeah. And I was like, never mind.
Yeah.
Just the worst.
A lot of them.
Scientology. Come on.
Yeah. Yep.
The optics of speaking at the Scientology like main center too is just like awful.
It's so bad.
I personally would rather see Warren than Harris, although I worry, Warren has some real, I think, electoral deficits. But
they both do.
They both do, but I mean, like, I think
worse
Harris
than Susan Rice.
Well, no, I mean, nobody could be seriously considering Susan Rice. I mean, come on.
I mean, Sam, we're talking about the Democrats here. Come on.
Warren's worse than Harris, though, I think, by quite a ways, especially in a general election.
In terms of the campaign.
Yeah.
I mean, I tend to think that. I think just Harris just sort of disappears in the context of a campaign. I think Warren becomes, more of a target. On the other side of that, though, in terms of actually being I would much rather that Warren has the resources to spend on an office like that than Harris, because it's going to go to people who are going to be closer in some respects ideologically than Harris. It's just a question of, does Warren's liabilities, that risk outweigh, or is it outweighed by the fact that there's going to be, that's why she wanted to be VP under Clinton, was because she wanted access to the resources that office provides in terms of like an ideological project. And I don't subscribe to all of her ideological agenda, but certainly better than Harris by far.
Yeah, they're all pretty bad politically. I honestly don't think that the choice of VP is going to make a big difference one way or the other in this race. So given those facts, I guess I would begrudgingly admit that Warren would be the best on policy.
Yeah. And she'll get better staffers paid, basically.
That's exactly it. That's what I'm saying. Like, she's going to she'll have the opportunity to build out what will be those people who get paid out of Warren's office and the money that's generated around there will sprinkle into people that we appreciate more than if it was Harris. Let's put it that way. It's going to seed stuff on the left. It's not going to seed it directly, but it's going to like sort of create some fertile ground for 2024. That's my sense anyways. Here is Chris Wallace doing what, frankly, I don't know why we're not hearing more about this from the Democrats. When Joe Biden says support the HEROES Act, the idea that they're not talking about the post office now is just stunning to me. Donald Trump has put in a postmaster general who is destroying the post office from within. I have had 2 conversations over the weekend. One from my eye doctor, the eye place. They can't get glasses back to me within a couple of weeks because why? They said specifically the post office. Friend of mine trying to do a small business. Package has been sitting at the central processing place for 5 days. She can see it. It's been tracking it. And this is because the post office is specifically now denying postal workers overtime to process and get packages out the door. Why are they doing this? 1, they want to debilitate the post office because of mail-in ballots. And 2, they want to privatize. They've been doing this. This has been a plan that's been ongoing for 15 years. Here's Chris Wallace, of all people, asking Jason Miller what's going on.
Up. I got to ask you one final question. You talked about the infrastructure, the system not being able to handle it and being overwhelmed. The Postmaster General of the United States, who is a big Republican contributor and a former Trump fundraiser, has just instituted some sizable changes at the U.S. Postal Service. Let's put them up on the screen. Prohibit overtime pay, shut down sorting machines early, require letter carriers to leave mail behind, and the result is that there is a delay in mail being delivered. Question, isn't the Postmaster General increasing the chances that the Postal Service will be overwhelmed, that the very infrastructure that you talk about it being overwhelmed will be overwhelmed coming up to the election?
No, Chris, not at all. And in fact, I think you're confusing a couple of different arguments here. The fact of the matter is that we saw from Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, who wanted to have the prepaid postage envelopes for ballots. Well, guess what? Normally, the post service doesn't go into
No. Wait a minute. Now, Jason, we're talking about the Postmaster General, Mr. DeJoy, and we're talking about cost-cutting reforms that he instituted in July.
Chris,
I'm not mixing up anything. If you want to answer my question, but please don't go into what Andrew Cuomo is doing. Answer my question.
I am answering your question. The Postal Service has been a disaster for decades. I'm glad that we're getting some financial accountability and trying to get the thing right-sized. But to go and try to put it off on that, it's these state governors trying to change the rules 90 days before an election that's going to lead to millions of Americans being disenfranchised. That's the issue, Chris. You can't go and change it away.
Jason, thank you. Thanks for talking with us.
I mean, Chris Wallace really should have said, Jason, thank you. You're an incredible liar. Appreciate your coming and disseminating that misinformation. The post office has not been a financial disaster for decades. The post office required zero public financing beyond what they made from stamps and their services up until the mid-aughts, when the Republican Party passed legislation that required the post office to pre-fund the retirement benefits for a 75-year period. That means that there are people who were not born, who would not be born for 20 or 30 years, and the post office was responsible for paying for funding their pensions before that. So a huge chunk of their operating budget went into funding that that pension. There is no government agency. There is no quasi-government agency. There is no private business or entity, maybe anywhere in the world, that has that requirement. The post office has been wanting to raise the cost of stamps for a while. The Congress would not let them. The Republican Party has been trying to sabotage the post office for over a decade and a half. And they're having the most success they've had right now. And it's a twofer. It's a twofer. They want to prevent mail-in ballots, and they want basically people to go, ugh, I can't get, I'm not mailing my package through the post office. Won't get there. I guess I got to go to FedEx. Unbelievable. But good for Chris Wallace, at least, for pushing him on that.
Yeah. How do they think people are going to get mail, or do they just not care?
Drones, competition, all that stuff.
Like, I will say, if I I used to not have a buzzer in my apartment. It was horrible. A lot of apartments around where I live don't have them. If I had to go to USPS, if something was sent USPS and I went to the local post office to get it, piece of cake. If something was sent via UPS or FedEx, I had to go to a part of town that is not even accessible by public transit and wait in line for an hour. And sometimes I would just give up. I don't need this package that bad.
It is. I don't think people appreciate how disastrous it's going to be.
I think people should realize how, the post office has to send you your mail at a certain rate, whereas every other mail carrier has no obligation to do so.
Right.
And they can choose not to.
And they will, they will go to, they are everywhere, the post office. All right. We missed this at John Lewis's funeral. Bill Clinton was just on a roll. They say when you have heart issues or something, it changes your personality. But I don't know why you got to go to a funeral. He had to diss Stokely Carmichael in a way that it's just weird. It was just weird.
Well, you know, he had to send a message that everyone needs to just calm down and be a little less militant and be a little more like John Lewis.
I mean, frankly, that is the government's message towards protesters is definitely, and the message they sent to the Black Panthers was, if you go Stokely Carmichael, we're going to, well, I mean, even if you don't, we're going to surveil you.
We're literally, and probably murder you because they did that too.
He seems completely hellbent on using this opportunity. Maybe it's just because he doesn't get enough of a platform anymore, he feels like, and so he really wanted to use this. I mean, honestly, I'm not being, cheeky here. Bill Clinton knew that this was probably the biggest platform he was going to have. Maybe, who knows, for the rest of the time, maybe get on Oprah or something like that. I don't know, but he doesn't have much opportunity to sort of broadcast a message. So he took it. And here's another one. This is clip number 13. This is Bill Clinton. Again, just like going to use this to settle some scores.
I thank President and Mrs. Bush, President Obama, Speaker Pelosi, thank you, and Representative Hoyer and Representative Clyburn, who I really thank for, with the stroke of a hand, ending an intra-family fight within our party, proving that peace is needed by everyone. Madam Mayor, thank you.
An intra-family fight? It was called a primary, you a-hole.
Yeah, peace meaning the absence of politics.
Like, give me a break. And he realized, that was not in his prepared remarks. That's how angry he is and how much he blames Bernie Sanders for Hillary Clinton losing, when I think it's quite clear that Hillary Clinton lost. And like I say a million times, there was probably like 12 but-fors, but about half a dozen of those were a function directly of Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. Well, he can't help himself. He's such a dick, and he knows there are going to be no consequences for the things he says, just like when he dissed Stokely Carmichael, which was not surprising if you look at how he treated the protesters from Black Lives Matter, right? We had some pretty horrible clips of him arguing with people about the crime bill and all that stuff. Same thing, overlapping group, Bernie Sanders people, young people who want to get some kind of rebuilt social welfare state in this country. He's like, hey, guess what? You're going to get nothing and you're going to like it. And we can do whatever we want. We've shown that. And you have to vote for us. Otherwise, you are supporting a fascist dictator.
And to your point, Sam, what you were saying earlier about Clinton was just kind of on one during this and kind of just went off script. He has a history of doing this, according to, people who have been around him and everything. And it brought up to mind when during one of the debates in 2016 where Trump was not apologizing for the Billy Bush tapes. And he said, Bill Clinton has said far worse things than me at a golf course, not even close. And I apologize if anyone's offended. But this is what Clinton does, I guess.
Yep. Here is Fox and Friends people sort of speaking what I would interpret as being aspirational. But for them, it is really just, it is also, I guess, aspirational, but it's not the case. And this is the biggest argument for Joe Biden's electability is that they just can't figure out how to run against this guy. And I don't know that if they were running against Bernie Sanders, who has an actual program, right? I mean, let's be honest. Now, Joe Biden has come out for a what I think is a fairly decent green, not quite New Deal type of situation. And he certainly has some proposals, but in terms of his big theme, it still is I'm going to return the country to normalness, which of course is absurd. But that's, and to be fair, very hard to run against that. But I'm not quite sure, frankly, that Donald Trump at this juncture, if he was up there going, Bernie Sanders is going to make sure you all are, have government-run healthcare insurance, if that would really make a difference. But here is an example, anyways, of the Fox and Friends people really struggling to figure out how they're going to run against Joe Biden.
Usually candidates during the primary run to the flanks of their party and then back to the middle. It's been the opposite for Joe Biden. Here he is working with Bernie Sanders and Comrade Cortez and others to move further left. And we see more evidence of that this weekend.
The evidence they're showing, incidentally, is a debate from 5 months ago. Pictures of people debating when they were running against each other. Comrade Cortez. Go ahead.
And we see more evidence of that this weekend.
You have the establishment, you have the moderates, and then you have the progressives. Then you have the far, far left that are out there rioting and inciting violence on these countries and saying defund police. Some of them are saying they don't want police at all. But they have come together on one thing.
What country?
Everyone, all the Democrats want to, President Trump out of office. They agree on that, Brian.
Okay. Yep. Joe Biden's got to make a decision. If the Trump campaign knows what they're doing, they will make Joe Biden make a decision. Either by the way, read his lips. He is raising your taxes. Yes. He told you that. He's raising the corporate rate. He's raising the top income bracket rate. He's raising capital gains rate. He's raising the real estate tax. It's costing more and more for you to die. So that's what he's telling us.
Now, Bernie. I want you to know that the taxes he just labeled off there, the corporate tax rate, the capital gains tax rate, the high income marginal rates, and the estate taxes, the number of people that he's actually talking to who are impacted by that is probably very close to the coincidentally the numbers I have up on my hand.
He's not even pretending that their taxes on the middle class.
No, they're like and they just say it like it's the overwhelming majority of people who are watching that. I would say that literally the number of people who are going to be paying estate taxes who watch Fox and Friends, simply because the number of people who are paying estate taxes is so low anyways, that just happen to be watching that segment. Honestly, I think you could get them into our office. We could fit those people in our office and everything else too. I mean, but that's what they're reaching for, but go ahead.
Sanders is saying, shh, once he gets elected, I'm going to make him go flying to the left. If the Trump campaign knows what they're doing, they got to make Joe Biden either divorce himself from Bernie Sanders or hug him before the election. Because if not, we've elected Bernie Sanders, which even panicked their party. Here's Sean Hannity.
Oh, okay.
Joe Biden now has stated policies that what he will do to America. He's adopted, I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime, Bolshevik Bernie's entire economic agenda. He's actually plagiarized it, taken it word for word. He's pledging trillions, not billions, trillions of dollars to AOC's new Green Deal. His gun czar will be Beto O'Rourke, Bozo I call him. And then you got Schumer, Pelosi, Biden. Okay. What have they done? What has Schumer, Pelosi, and Joe Biden accomplished? Because combined, they've been in the swamp in Washington, Mark, for 125 years.
They just show clips of him asking Mark Levine stuff.
Right. I call him Bozo. I love that. That's a
pretty good burn.
How did you come up with that name? Bozo. Bolshevik Bernie. That was very good. I think, and listen, if Hannity is saying this and Fox and Friends is highlighting Hannity saying this, that's what we can expect from Trump soon, is this argument that he is in Bernie Sanders' pocket, that Biden is in Bernie Sanders' pocket. If only. But it's not going to work because Biden's just going to go, no, I'm not. What are you talking about, man?
I mean, it's pretty common knowledge that Biden and Bernie are not friends. I mean, they're friendly on a personal level, but politically, I mean, Trump has been out there saying it. that what they did to Bernie was very unfair, folks. And all the Bernie supporters are welcome to vote for me because of trade.
I call Beto Bozo because there's an O at the name and a B, and I just changed 2 letters.
I kind of like that.
For that. I wonder if he had to hire a writer from one of those white supremacist forums to write that up for him.
I don't know. Have you checked Saul's online activities? Maybe he's been doing some consulting.
Exactly. Beto. What about Bozo? That's got like 2 of the same letters.
Adopting the entire, Bernie Sanders campaign platform besides rejecting Medicare for all from the DNC, charter or whatever.
Right. All right. I'm sorry.
Marijuana legalization also.
Yes. Except for all of the big ones. Sorry, folks. I don't have any more time to take any calls. It's just the beginning of the week. We will be able to take calls as we go, and I'll do 5 more IMs, then we'll get out of here. Greg Fitzsimmons, Sam, have you ever had a run-in with Ellen, and do you take as much joy in her pending cancellation, literal cancellation, as I do? To be honest with you, I had no idea that she was being canceled, that her show was ending. I've never had a run-in with Ellen. I've never met her.
That speaks volumes in itself.
It never even occurred to me that I would want to do that.
It's about time, though, honestly. She rehabbed George W. She did some shady things to her employees. That's enough for me.
Yep. I have no problem with that whatsoever. McMorrow, why do we allow patriotism to be weaponized against us? What can we do to take back symbols of America, or is it too late? The American flag today is something you just put on your big dirty truck to piss off socialist libtards. I feel like most left ideology is rooted in the original ideas put forth in the creation of the United States. So I see leftists as being patriotic by default. I think it would be powerful to admit we want to change because we love our country, especially against the backdrop of faux patriotism. Conservatives have adopted. Thanks. Keep up the work. R.I.P.
I would recommend my series Literary Hangover that has been released. I think 2 of the 3 parts for public about George Orwell's Lion and the Unicorn, which was about wrestling that exact same issue during World War II.
And let me tell you too, this is not new. I mean, they were, Rick Wilson was converting. I think it was Rick Wilson was converting Max Cleland's image in the wake of 9/11. This is a guy who lost. I think he was a triple or quadruple amputee in Vietnam. Senator from Georgia. They morphed him into Osama bin Laden, because I think he was against maybe DHS. I'm not 100% sure what it was. This is not a new thing. I can just tell you that.
I don't think patriotism or nationalism are ever going to be liberatory. But if, progressive Democrats think it'll be advantageous politically to invoke it, fine.
Right. I mean, yes. Yes. But it also, there is a way to redefine it, and so that it can actually promote values that are also humanist values.
Yeah. Exactly. It would just be a different set of people and characters in your mythology, patriotic mythology, than
right.
Thomas Jefferson.
It's instead of like freedom being like, you can't force me to wear a mask. Freedom is more like the 4 freedoms type of situation. Comrade, I'm someone who lost work due to COVID. We can't simply stay home and collect a check. I was required to perform 3 job searches a week to receive any benefits. I had to apply to jobs I never wanted to stay afloat. Cave Dweller, did you happen to catch Fetus Face on Joe Rogan's a couple of weeks ago? I know you guys have been busy, but if you haven't watched the episode, it's worth it for the laughs. Is that Ben Shapiro?
It was Ben Shapiro.
I assume so.
We should dig into that. People should send me clips at Majority Reporters.
Maybe Rogan turned him on to Molly.
People have been talking about your Ben Shapiro Molly. We should also pull that. There was a good clip of Dave Rubin. What was he? Was some guy? God, man, that guy is not bright. Bear at home, me too. Is there a betting site for MR Pacman? Okay. Oh, Jeff from Georgia had Ronald Reagan on his show over the weekend. Everyone should check it out and subscribe. Who knows? Maybe they can both beat MR in subscriptions too. Rube David, Since Reagan, hasn't this been the conservative policy? If the economy crashes, don't give money to consumers who will spend it. Instead, give it to owner class to tide them over. Yes. Trickle down. Rube, the VP is the future establishment in the party. In that respect, I would think we would want Warren over Harris. Yes, I agree. Bunker Inspector. Hey, Sam, can I get a shofar? My son said it's, we did that already. 2 more. Grand Left Auto. Hey, MR, newish listener to the show. Welcome. During the show intro, you say located in the heartland of America, Brooklyn, New York, USA. And it makes my Midwestern wife extremely angry for some reason. She's very curious as to your reasons behind this. Either way, I love the show. My reasons are, well, partly it's sort of a joke, a little bit.
My mom also hates it.
It's part of a joke insofar as that, like I say, the heartland of America, and everybody has these expectations of what they are. And you'll notice that when I am not lacking sleep and feeling particularly animated, I will say Brooklyn, New York, USA, in a way that deflates your expectations slightly. But the other reason is, I'm sorry. You don't get to say the heartland of America because you live in the Midwest. What does that mean? What does that mean, the heartland?
It's in the middle, like where the heart is in the body.
The heart is not in the middle of the body.
Yeah, if you were to make the body into the United States map, it would kind of be right where New York is.
Exactly. Exactly. It is actually the colon that's in the middle of the body. I mean, they don't say the colon land of America.
I'm not great with geography or biology, so never mind.
My point is that, like, what is that? Like,
like in Ohio.
Yeah, but I understand that. But like, I'm sorry. Like, why does Columbus, Ohio, because that's where they try out, like new Wendy's burgers or so. Why
that is cool.
No, it's because that's where the heart would be if the United States was a human body.
But we've just said that that's not the case.
Of course it is. It's the heart is in the center a little bit to the left. And
excuse me, this is not the center of my body. The center of my body is my colon.
There is no consensus as to the geography of America's heartland.
You don't know how squat America is. America's a very squat person.
I'm a squat person. It is the colon. It is the colon of America in the middle. Either
New York's the armpit, right armpit of America.
No, New Jersey's the armpit.
Either like literally, if Maine was the head, then New York would be where the heart is. Or it could be the knee of
the
America.
whole northern border is the top of the head.
It's inconsistent.
Maybe there's something ideological going on in this framing.
That's exactly my point, and that's why I like to undercut it. And it was also there was a left-wing AM talk radio host who really played up the fact that they were from your part of the country, Matt.
I wonder who that would be.
More American.
Yeah. No way, no one's going to find that out.
I'm sorry. I took issue with that. I happen to think that a city where you have, I don't even know how many ethnicities and places of origin and of disparate people.
And just a lot of people too.
And a lot of people. I mean, give me a break. Now look, they said Worcester was the heart of the Commonwealth. Okay. Because it's actually not exactly in the center. It's just up a little bit further in Massachusetts. It's also the location where the most amount of people in Massachusetts, like there's no place, I think maybe short of Boston, where 360 degrees, you can get people there. But Brooklyn has that too. So I'm sorry. You know what I would say to you, sir? I would say you should ask your Midwestern wife, and Matt, you should ask your mom. Maybe they need to examine why they think that that they own Heartland of America. My argument is the Heartland of America is everywhere because your heart travels with you.
I mean, I feel like there's also a geographic case about like where the food crops are brought in from.
Well, that would be the bread belt.
Well,
I'm sure somebody.
Call it the bread belt.
I'm sure somebody is making a diagram as we speak, trying to prove exactly where the heart is in America if America were a human body.
The discourse is just starting on this one.
I mean,
folks.
look, there's just no way that this is in the center of my body.
I just want to say, I don't want to have that argument. I just want to say the entire northern border is the top of the head. So that's all I'm saying.
That is a very, very short, fat person.
I don't know why you're being judgmental, but
I'm not being judgmental.
It's not Maine.
I'm just saying that,
It's
like,
not
I just
Maine.
think anatomically speaking, I just don't think you see anybody like that. It's a cartoon character. All right, one more, and then we're out of here. Darth Shapino. Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? I thought not. It's a story the Jedi would tell. It's not a story the Jedi would tell you. It's Sith legend.
All this
Darth
philosophy
Plagueis
goes over my head.
Was a dark lord of the Sith, so powerful and wise he could use the Force to influence midichlorians to create life. He had such a knowledge of the dark side that he could even keep the ones he cared about from dying. The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural. He became so powerful. The only thing he did was afraid of losing his power, which eventually, of course, he did. Unfortunately, he taught his apprentice everything he knew. Then his apprentice killed himself, and it killed him in his sleep. Ironic. He could save others from death, but not himself. Wow. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in.